Hey guys, so we're about to start soon. How you guys all doing? They're picking up tiles. Uh, I don't know what's taking them so long.
So, who's first? You.
Whoa, I look like a terrorist on stream or something. Maybe not a terrorist, but like, I don't know, some evil person in the back
I'm
picture.
telling you, like,
No,
if you
it's
quackle,
Alright, Churro.
yeah.
There's VODs too if you want, but if we're gonna be here a while, it's pretty much the entire day, so.
There's no
But yeah, you know,
thing with your
I understand that people have a life.
You play, it's the real thing.
I don't know how long the
the
stream has been going on,
You're like going back and forth,
but it's been a
and
while.
playing so fast. So yeah.
We'll see how much longer it'll be. It probably just depends on whether people win their sets quickly or whether it takes a long time. I have no idea.
Tournament games though.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's how I am. I have this like super evil, evil super villain type of thing going on sometimes. Definitely. I have lots of pictures of me being the evil superhero. Or the evil supervillain rather. Jeremy Hildebrand actually made a shirt with me of a super villain, where it was a picture of me like watching a game and just, I still have it. He made it for me like 10 years ago, maybe more. But yeah, it's kind of like that gamer, mentality, sort of like just in the background, it's like ha 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 ha.
Okay, so it's not funny as shit.
But
for him,
yeah,
right?
opening play
right
A, yeah.
Yeah.
That is the correct play.
You ready?
Yeah.
Kenji, you ready and everything?
Yeah.
Alright. They can't hear us on the stream, can they?
Now they can. Do you want them not to?
No, I'd rather they can.
Now they can.
You hear our trash talking.
Anyway, let me know if I'm too loud or not loud enough. I have no idea.
Yeah, even here?
No,
whisper it real quietly.
But it looks like they're going to get started pretty soon. Alright, I have to put Quackle in. So Jackson is going first. AIILMPS. So lots of things that are almost near bingos. I obviously can't even put the letters in alphabetical order. You can actually you can actually exchange I here as a reasonable option. I know that a lot of people don't make lines like that, but AILNPS is actually like one of the more deceptive good leaves that you just kind of have memorized. It's not something that a lot of people record, and it may not be worth doing. You can just play peony, and that's fine. Peony being the plural of piano, which maybe is a little bit silly, but yeah. You can also just play PI. Just depends on what you want to do if you're Jackson. Piney looks good, or peony. That's what he likes to play. He's going to come down. Sid plays Anxiety rather quickly. I think that's a bit too quickly. It's not that great. Probably is the best play, but I would take a little bit of time to at least think. And yeah, he actually does take a little bit of time to think. There's stuff like Pixie as well, Nixie, and other stuff that's okay. Ixnay as well. Mostly depends on what Sid wants to do with the board. Anxiety, I guess, does do what Sid is generally trying to do. Sid's trying to block off the top left quadrant. Like, that's always Sid's, not always, but it's usually Sid's MO for the way that he's trying to structure a game. And Anxiety does that pretty well. The P doesn't go westward. But yeah, he mostly wants to kill this entire area up here. I do expect he's going to eventually end up playing Anxiety. I don't think that Nixie is the type of play he usually makes, although that does the same thing at least okay. It does take A and A in front, which means that you can open that quadrant up a little bit, though, which is maybe why he's going to be a little bit hesitant to do that. As you can see, Jackson doing the exact same thing that I'd say that you shouldn't do, which is set up your tiles in order. But he is doing that. Sid does play Nixie. This is going to get ugly pretty quickly, perhaps. I'm just going to assume I'm gonna put Jackson's in play ahead of time because there's no way on earth he's not playing that. In this case, like, I don't even turn the board. Like, why bother? Like, there's not even like a theoretical play that's better than flagship. The only reason to turn the board in this case is to make your opponent turn the board back, which is actually reasonable. There's something to be said for, like, I can actually play upside down pretty much as well as I play right side up, but why bother? Like, I don't want my opponent to be seeing their plays right side up and have the board right side up for them to think, which is actually one of the main reasons to turn the board. It's nothing to do with you. Part of me wanted to experiment for a while about turning the board sideways, but that would just make me a jerk. I kind of surmised. Sid bingoing back.
82.
And Jackson with a very ugly rack. So with these sorts of racks, you want to be thinking about, okay, what can I actually hit best case? Like, if I make a certain play and keep a certain leave, what am I going to do? Or what can I draw? Like, what am I one letter away from? Such that if I keep the letter, at least it turns out to be okay. So there's stuff like a wee, there's some other plays that are at least okay. Weenie here, but like AUU is just not near anything. Like, what are you hoping to draw? What's like one tile you can draw that makes that leave okay? Pretty much nothing. You could just try to balance a little bit and play like luau, but that doesn't really accomplish much either. I guess you're one letter away from stuff like weenie and weedy down here. So that makes it at least okay. Not really many scoring things. You can open the board if you really want to and play runaway, but there's not really any reason to do that. EEU is not going to really do anything. He just deflects to exchange. I think that's fine. None of the other plays seem to really accomplish very much. Both of them are playing very quickly at this point.
39.
Sid again playing very quickly on a rack that I don't think you need to be playing very quickly on. It is the best play, but I would definitely be playing a little bit slower. Maybe I'm just, because I'm inputting this game, it feels faster than it actually is. Jackson looking to get rid of some vowels. He has 5 vowels and 2 consonants. Ideally, it's just 2 and 2. But 3 vowels, 2 consonants isn't bad. It's very, very volatile, so it's very risky to keep 3 vowels. But it does bingo more often than keeping 2 vowels. AEIRT, for example, is a much better lead than AERT in terms of bingo percentage, but also has the potential to just completely fall apart. All of your plays generally are going to be either bingos or going to be 10-point plays next turn. So a lot of times we like to avoid it, but if you need a bingo desperately, you are better off keeping a third vowel. But something like JEU versus something like EAU, that's kind of the two options that you're mostly thinking about. Again, the main problem being there's not really any bingo lines, especially after EAU, but you don't necessarily need there to be. It is likely that a lot of bingos that you get will not play. So you can consider some other options entirely. You consider something like saute, that would make some sense. You can consider something like your AI, that would make some sense. Don't necessarily have to be focusing on bingoing. You can even play urinate through the RNA. That would be at least okay. But yeah, despite the fact that this is a very bingo-friendly leave, it doesn't necessarily mean you actually have to be trying to realize that bingo, considering how bad the board is right now. You can make something that's a little bit more, that keeps a little bit worse of a leave because of the fact that a bingo, even if you do draw it, is very likely just not to play here. Other options are like etui would make some sense as well. But yeah, I don't think it's nearly as good to make plays like EAU or JEU, despite the fact they're probably the best points in the league. Just because of the best points in lead doesn't mean it's the best tactically. That being said, EAU and then, fishing and then not bingoing there's nothing really wrong with that. It's not like the sport is going to be able to be closed forever, and at the same time, when your fishing plays for bingos score just as many points as your non-fishing plays, it's just kind of like, oh, well, why not? Like, there's not really any cost with playing stuff like EAU or JEU because they're basically just as good plays even without the bingo potential. The highest scoring play you can make here is, I guess, like 20 points, maybe. Something like REIF or something, but that's not even that great, and it believe is terrible, so again, bingo potential not the only thing to consider here. And he likes to go with URAI, which does make some sense. Does keep things a little bit more open. He does want to draw an S for the XIS spot. And just not really a lot of other good things to do. He could play it on the right as well, but he likes to play on the left. I think it's basically the same. I guess playing it on the right leaves the scoring spots a little bit worse, so there is some benefit there. I might have preferred that just slightly. Sid also near bingo. Probably just gonna see Roof here. I would imagine that happening pretty quickly, considering how fast Sid has played the other games. Not really a lot of other things. You would be looking for bingos to the I, to the E. But it's pretty clear, I think, with not too much looking, that there probably isn't one. There's no reason for you to open up the board because you're ahead, and Jackson's going to likely try to open up the board at some point himself. So if your opponent's behind and they're going to open up the board, why bother? Even though you may have a much better rack than they have. Again, Jackson just drew 5 tiles, so Sid is going to have a better rack than Jackson's potential range. But yeah, I don't see really any potential for anything other than Roof here. It's just so much better than any other option. I guess you can consider Roofer. Your AI does not take an S-hook horse. Your AI is the plural to Uraeus. Uraeus. You can look it up using the define bot if you'd like. But yeah, if it did take an S, I suspect Jackson would not have played it. It's interesting to me that Sid is taking this long on Roof and took so little time on the other plays. It's a very... I wonder what he's thinking about. Maybe Roofer is the only other thing I consider. Maybe just OR? Maybe Rue over... He's going to play Rue to block. Interesting. I can't say I like this. It's probably a little bit too defensive in a board where there's still S's, there's still blanks. You're never going to close the board the entire game. And there's no reason to think that Jackson's range is particularly good. In fact, it's pretty terrible. So I don't really think I like this line, but it does have the intention of stopping more bingos in the short term, which maybe is a concern if you're ahead, just maybe not to this degree. Jackson plays View fairly quickly, probably going to be the best play, creates an S-hook. He could play Waif as well, I guess. If he really wants to open the board, he could force it open with Refuel, but that doesn't even really work. Most of the time, it just gets paralleled. So View does look like the best play. There's no reason to open. Your opponent just played off 3 tiles, so probably, again, has a much stronger range than you. So there's no reason to force things super open. A bingo may not be as likely, but it will happen eventually for both of you, probably. So Sid back in the same position, really nothing open, no real way to block. Looks like he wanted to keep the ER hook or the S hook. Yeah, no, he wanted to make it less likely for Jackson to bingo. That's what his thought is. He's ahead. Why open things to make it easier for your opponent to bingo? If you can't bingo, especially in a board like this, you probably can't score. But at the same time, sacrificing points against a range that isn't that great. If Jackson made a play last turn that signified a really strong range, he made, let's say, a 2-tile play that scored 15 points, Rue would be a much more reasonable option. But he played 4 vowels in a 5-tile play and drew 5 tiles. So because of that, his likely tiles that he's holding just aren't that strong. If they were strong, then I could get behind a play like Rue a lot more. When are you gonna upload videos again? Actually, pretty soon, hopefully. I do stream as well some of the time. I haven't streamed much lately, mostly because I've been doing this commentary. I did commentary last week as well, but I do stream some. But I am hoping to make videos as well. It's been a while, but I have quite a bit of stuff just backed up on my computer. Sid loves to play off the N and the E, which is a bit interesting to me. He plays meme instead of just playing EM in the same spot. Not really sure why you would go around this. Again, you're not really trying to bingo, so from that sense, it's nice, but 4 points for that much of an increase in bingo percentage? I don't know. Different than what I would probably be doing here. I understand the logic, I guess, but when you combine that with the fact that you're probably creating more options for Jackson, again, he plays Gallop immediately, and that's an option that happens with Name. Clearly going to be the best option, but the fact that you would make a play like that is much more interesting. I know I'm talking a lot more about Sid's plays. They're more interesting. Jackson's plays are just a little bit more automatic and clearly a little bit more conventional. Sid does draw pretty well. But again, the board is pretty dead, and that's his own doing, and he's perfectly welcome to do that. But Jackson's not going to really just force the board open. Note that that's a mistake a lot of people make, is that when somebody is opening the board or closing the board in the early game, they just automatically try to force the board open. There's not really a need to do that most of the time. There's nothing wrong with just keeping the board relatively dead and just letting them continue sacrificing points and catching up. And over the last 3 or 4 turns, Jackson's turned, a 50-point deficit into basically a tied game, maybe down a tempo, but he could have forced the board open with things like Reveal, but he didn't see the need to, and there wasn't a need to because Sid's range was just so much stronger. So if he did force the board open, a lot of the time Sid would have had a bingo, and then the game would be really out of reach. He'd be down by over a bingo, and the board would still be pretty bad. So I definitely like this more restrained approach that doesn't force things to happen. Sid's options, not exactly great here. In this sort of rack with this sort of situation, since you're not going to score much anyway, you're mostly looking through the bag and trying to figure out, okay, what leave is going to bingo the most often without opening too much. So you're looking for bingos that start with S. So, you're almost near things like Secrete, for example, or Steered. So most of the time you're going to be looking for things that don't open them up too much because you want to keep you don't really need to open the board, but you want to actually have some options. So stuff like Cud maybe makes sense. He plays Dasse. Not really sure why you would. I mean, it doesn't open anything, so there is that. Again, he doesn't want to. He wants to prevent scoring. He wants to prevent plays that are going to really. He doesn't want to create anything that's going to let Jackson come back, which I understand, but I'm not sure I would necessarily do it in that way. Again, very, very unusual lines by Sid. Jackson plays blot. Again, he's in no rush to open the board. He could force it open, but again, why? So, yeah, standard play. Keeps the best leave. Q can still hit some options. Even if it doesn't, well, that's okay. Sid draws pretty poorly. So most of the time with this sort of rack, you want to score. And again, now Sid's not actually even ahead anymore. He's behind a little bit. He's ahead when you add in the fact that it's his turn. But, you know, most of us would be probably making some play like devs or dev and open the board and try to clean up the rack a little bit, given how close the score is. I don't expect Sid to do this at all. It would actually shock me if he makes any of these sorts of plays. I think Vest is probably the most likely play. Maybe he'll play dev, but it would just go against everything that I expect and kind of make the last few turns maybe a little obsolete. I think he's maybe over evaluating the current score of the game if he does something like that. Maybe he'll play revs or something like that. I actually think Vest might actually be the best play here. Because Jackson's range is just getting better and better and better. Blot is actually a pretty decent range, even though Jackson didn't have a good rack that turn. It looks like he does, or at least something decent. Opening up a triple lane or opening up a big hook isn't generally something you're going to want to be doing. So I don't think he's going to make something that is going to play through. Vest is just a lot safer. It scores a little bit less, but not much less, and without the same downsides. Sid likes to exchange. I actually think that's not bad either. I think that's probably the other reasonable option if you're not going to play Vest. I think that's probably the next best option because again, you have lots of different bingo options. Jackson plays Quag pretty quickly. He keeps the U's so that he can cash the Q next turn as well. He has all sorts of stuff he can draw there. Quill, Quell, Wool, they all fit there. So there's 3 vowels right there. Just immediately he gets a 40-point play. The other vowel is an A, which works pretty well, and he'll draw a lot of stuff with the A that fits there as well. So definitely the best option there. And as you can see, like, despite the fact that the board has remained closed this entire time, Sid, he's not forcing the board open at all, and he's still managing to just outrun Sid. Like, there's no need to necessarily just force things. Jackson's not forcing things. He's just taking the lead by scoring. There's nothing wrong with that, and I'd like to see a lot more players take that sort of approach. But yeah, anyway, Sid plays Treff. I would like to see him make something more open like viewer, but I understand it's not going to happen. So, yeah, I think that maybe this defensive approach has run its course. But I think at this point you kind of don't want to give up on it. So anyway, Jackson plays Quilt. Again, he could play Quill at it and force things open, but again, he doesn't see the need to do that. At this point, he's the one with the lead, so it makes perfect sense. So Joey, who was commentating earlier in the chat, Sid has really killed himself here. You just can't play Scrabble this way. I mean, this is the way that Sid plays. And you can make this work. But I think you need to learn how to get off the gas sometimes a little bit. And this isn't a good matchup for him specifically because Jackson can play this style too and plays against me and Josh, both of whom don't play to the degree, don't play defense to the degree that Sid does, but plays a lot of defense, a lot more defense than almost anybody else does. So when the objective of a style like Sid's mostly is to try to induce mistakes. It's to induce stuff like reviewal. It's to induce somebody who, when they're behind, they're going to just open the board blindly and badly. And you're basically relying on that when you're playing this style. But Jackson's not going to do that. Jackson's not going to fall for that. So because of that, this is actually probably Sid's worst matchup out of the three of them. But, I mean, that's obviously a matter of interpretation to some degree. Sid plays O. I think that's probably fine. He doesn't have a lot of really good options with his rack. Again, bingos are going to happen this game. XIS and views, they're going to stay there until somebody hits a bingo. It's just inevitable at some point. Jess being an option. That's not his rack, actually. Sorry. That's not going to happen. So now Jackson's kind of in the other spot where he doesn't really have any good plays that open the board or close the board. Rue and Neem are just crazy to you. Like I don't think that Sid thinks enough about, like, if you're going to play a super defensive style, I think you need to think about ranges a lot more. You can't just be like, oh, I'm ahead. Like, you need to think about, oh, well, what is my range relative to my opponent? And it's actually a lot harder to play a style like Sid's and play it well because you are inducing mistakes a lot of the time and you rely on that, and because a lot of the time you have to be thinking about a lot of things that are not just points and leave. Just fairly difficult to do effectively. Not a lot of options here for Jackson. He has leg lined up. Probably next to Ree. That doesn't look very good. That the parallels there are just kind of painful, and BEOT, BEDT is not going anywhere. I keep having his rack on. He plays viewed. I actually may have even exchanged there, to be honest. Not a lot of great stuff. You don't want to be playing stuff like these. Viewed is fine if you're going to make a play, just because you do kind of want to kill the S hook somewhat. Now Sid's the one who's scoring. He has a much better scoring rack. Just plays Keno. Again, that S hook is still there. There's still two of them. You still can't really do anything about both of them, although you kind of can now. A 2-tile drop in this location now feels pretty good. Something like I don't know. I guess most of the things here do leave hooks still, so maybe not, but... And there's still a blank out, so yeah, maybe this isn't exactly the right theme. Again, since there is a blank, and since there's 2 blanks out, and since there's 2 S's out, bingos are going to happen. I know it doesn't seem like it, and I know this board seems dead, and like, oh, this is going to be a low-scoring game. I promise you, this will not be a low-scoring game. Somebody's breaking 400, and at least one bingo is happening, probably 2. Just maybe not immediately. I see something like Gel, Jed. Yeah, those are fine. Again, not really much lanes now. You did kill both of the S hooks, but you still have the quilt hook. Maybe it is possible at this point for things to die, but it's still going to require a lot more effort. And that D hook is still going to, that D and Jed is just going to stay there. It's not going to be blocked. It's hard to block. It's just going to stay there until somebody hits a bingo with it, probably. Both players probably thinking the other person's rack is a lot stronger than it actually is right now. But blanks, again, are at a premium. You need to move tiles. You need to score. You probably can't be scared here just because even though it looks like the board's dead and, oh, I'm opening something for my opponent, you're going to be doing it regardless. So you may not want to leave something great, but something like Franz here, for example, despite not looking very good, actually would make a lot of sense. Pool's very strong. I can type the pool in chat. There's 2 blanks still. There's 2 S's out. This is the pool from Sid's perspective. So from Jackson's perspective, it's even better, obviously. Sid plays Fens. I would have liked to see Franz a little bit better, but Fens obviously does score a bit more. Again, not really much hope, reason to keep the S, but yeah, that pool is pretty good, and from Jackson's perspective, it's even better. Sid draws a bingo, which is completely expected. Bound to happen eventually. Jackson probably thinks that Sid has a second S, and he's wrong, but I would definitely think that. You might exchange with Jackson's rack. It's very possibly the best play. Very likely. If it's not exchanging, it's playing something like Alcid and just playing a bunch of tiles off, which is what he has lined up. Makes sense. I mean, if you're gonna exchange, you may as well play off 5 tiles. It's basically exchanging. Sid did play the last E off, which is relevant, which is part of why I would have preferred Franz a little bit. But I guess the other reason being that if you play if here, then Jackson can play in column J something like, I don't know, abs and potentially or something. And that would actually make bingoing pretty tough. You'd only have to have bingo starting with the D, and that might not be ideal. So, yeah, I probably would have played Franz there. At this point in the blank, it's like it's actually only a race to the blanks. The S doesn't really have very much value anymore, to be honest. Like, the S is still nice, it's still a good tile, but it's like a slightly better version of the R. The E is probably more valuable. The E that Sid spent on Fens is actually probably more valuable than the S's on this board. I'm actually not kidding. Because there's another S to be had, and the E is useful for trying to hit bingos that start with a vowel. There's DE stuff. So yeah, the E is probably actually better than the S. This is one of the worst boards for the S possible, really. Just because there's several of them out, because there's blanks out. Yeah, you can see Jackson just thinking about, like, he's not even considering short plays here. He's thinking about Alcid or Didact, and that's it. Because he knows that he needs to move tiles desperately, and he does. He plays Alcid. I think makes a lot of sense. Again, Sid has his rack lined up. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but it may have. I expect Austerity to come down. I guess there's a chance that he may think that Alcid is an adjective. That's not the right draw for Jackson. But yeah, there may be a chance that Sid at least thinks about not playing Alcid just because it looks like an adjective. It looks like something like algid or some other, something that doesn't take an S, but Alcid does in fact take an S. Ostiari does come down. I expect there's a chance Jackson will just challenge this as well, just because he can't win any other way. He knows he can't win any other way, and it's something that in theory might not take an S. So I actually expect a challenge most of the time because he can't win. Yeah, he's challenging. That's not even remotely surprising. Algid does not take an S, but Alcid does. So they're checking the word. It's valid. Yeah. Thanks for the definition. I actually had no idea what Alcid meant. Algid, I think, means cold. But, yeah. So Sid's going to win this one. Jackson passes.
Okay.
No, he does not have the blank. Ritz would have been a good comeback. Ritz would still be down 15, and Sid has a AO blank to go out, so anything would win. So I mean, there's just no point. And spread doesn't really matter. So yeah, you have to challenge in those sorts of situations. Not even close. Oh yeah, I didn't have the score updated. I'm sorry. But yeah, Sid's just gonna play whatever. He's looking for the best play. I wouldn't even bother in this case. I'd just play whatever. Actually is no good play here. Like, it looks like there's going to be some 15-point play here that there's nothing. There's a bunch of 10-point mediocre options. Highest scoring play is actually Zoa, which is what Sid plays, and probably doesn't think that it's the best play, but it actually is. So we have a win for Sid, and it is 4-4.
46. Wow, that's nuts. Yeah, 42.
46?
Yeah, I mean, I can't count, so that's.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got 10 for that. So 402, 448, 323.
Yeah. 333, I get?
3, yeah, I misadded.
Okay,
33.
yeah, good.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Dude, that was. How the fuck do you, like, dodge, like, all the good tiles? Like, every good tile.
Weird to see a tile where the bottom left quadrant that has no tiles played into it. The bottom right quadrant, yeah. Not that unusual by Knack. It does happen, especially in a lot of Sid games. Like, Sid's going to try to close quadrants, and the first quadrant you usually close is the top left. But if you can't close the top left, usually the next quadrant that actually gets killed is the bottom right.
But if I can draw bingo,
For kind of spatial reasons that might be a little bit difficult to explain on stream.
we've had so many
But
games where, like, it feels
these
like
sorts of things do
so
definitely
close and
happen,
the blank
because
burns
usually you're
so
trying to
much,
open
and
one
it's
board,
just
one side of the board or the
how
other.
long do you have the blank for?
And as soon as Nixie comes down, usually you expect to see that S hook, but if that S hook to XI never gets played going south, then yeah, you're just never going to see it ever materialize.
When it has a blank, I drew
It is worth noting that Sid would have won this game, like, even if he didn't draw the blank, probably.
Yeah,
Just given the
Classic.
fact that after Fens he drew well, and
This is
after
crazy.
Alcid
I kept,
Jackson
like,
didn't. That was pretty
good
much the
tiles
game for the
like,
most part.
Most of the game. Like,
Yeah.
when I exchanged 3, I exchanged DVG, keeping REST.
That being said,
and I
like,
could've played
Sid had a
instead
lead
for, like,
before
2
then as
more,
well,
keeping
and
GRST
Jackson
if I
kind of
chose
just
not to.
fell back into it,
Like,
and then
I
just
had
never really got the
ERST
tile at
for,
the
like,
end.
Like, good tiles like that, like Kino kept ERS, like, stuff
But
like
that's
that.
kind of how Scrabble goes, and that's kind of how this style goes in
And then I
general.
decided to
The
blow
way
it
that
up
Sid
here, and
plays,
then I
if
got
you
this
do
one.
not draw a blank,
Yeah.
you are generally just screwed. I used to play a style that was kind of like this. Not exactly like this, probably a little bit less extreme than Sid's style, but one of the things I found a lot of the time is if I drew both blanks, I won like every game, and if I drew neither blank, I won like 20% of games. Which is just really annoying, as you can probably guess. Like, it relies on drawing blanks a lot.
Well, it kept ERT
Not just because
always
you
worth
need
what
them, but because you need your opponent not to have them.
ERT
You
is,
need
like,
your opponent to
already
just...
worth. ERT is, like, already, like,
The weak
8 months
lanes on the
better than-
board
Yeah.
just need to never get hit. You know, this
Well, I mean,
entire
you're
game,
the
there were
same on Echo
bingo
Games.
lines that were there that weren't great.
Yeah.
I mean, on
But
this board, I guess you have
if your opponent hits them,
Well, I don't,
Sid's
like,
style
on the
really
first
just falls
turn, like-
apart.
Like, I just think, like,
And most
depends
defensive
on who
styles
you
fall
play,
apart
right?
for that reason. And
I mean,
that's
I know
essentially the
Scrabble
reason
is
also
like,
why
ERT
you
is,
can't
like,
play this
not
style
worth
in
8
Collins.
months after Nixie.
Because
But,
it's
like,
just that much more
I
likely
still
that
think it
those
is
bad
overrated,
lanes
right?
eventually
'Cause, like,
get hit.
it's the
And
first
as soon
thing
as
that
those
people who play
those lines
on
get
the
hit,
board
as soon as
look
a
at.
bingo line that isn't very good turns into a
Yeah, I
bingo,
guess you would have played Anxiety, right?
defensive styles just fall apart. And
Says 4-4.
with
Yeah.
blanks, that's very likely to happen.
And you went
If we had a
first,
game that didn't have blanks in them, Sid's style would actually be optimal.
It sounds so
You would
dumb, except
want to
you
be
have to
playing
explain.
something where you're playing hyper defensively all the time
Ask who served.
and sacrificing points to do so. And as soon as you have a lead, or as soon as you even have a small lead, or even if you don't have a lead, as soon as the score is close, but you don't have a bingo, and therefore your opponent has first move advantage, you don't really want to open very often. But the fact that blanks exist and make bingos so much more likely makes closed board styles where you just keep the board closed and sacrifice a bunch of points and leave, and position and setups and all this sort of stuff to do that
feel like
makes
you're gonna
closed
win
boards a
some, but
lot
fucking
more
In general,
untenable
yeah.
in the
Yeah.
long run.
I did feel
And obviously, the more words there are, the more untenable it becomes. But yeah, at any point, if if a bingo starting an S forming XIS formed this entire game, the entire strategy just falls apart, which is one of the reasons why that sort of strategy is really tough to play. Still worth playing in a lot of cases, specifically if you think that by playing a closed board strategy, your opponent is going to open and sacrifice points to open recklessly into stronger ranges. Do you have an opinion of the opposite style where you try to open the board? I mean, you can certainly make it work. There are lots of good players who have made it work, who force it open at any cost.
Out of all my leads this game, AOR.
You just have to do it mindful of. If you do it, you have to be mindful of what opponents are going to try to do back. And if you're sacrificing points to do it, there's generally nothing your opponent can do other than to duel with you, but you're sacrificing points to force it to happen. So you just have to be a lot better at word finding than everybody else and realize that the opposite thing can happen. The board can close by turn 8 because the entire board's used. I would play Dave Wiegand a lot back in the day when he was playing, before he was playing, he switched to Collins, where the entire game was me closing the board and him opening it. Because I genuinely believed and still believe to this day that the best way to play Dave Wiegand in NWL is to close the board. Because I just think his word knowledge is amazing and his tactics maybe aren't as amazing, and that if you force the board closed and do it well, that you have an edge. And his entire adaptation to that was just to force the board open every game. And we just had this dynamic where the first 3 or 4 turns of the game, we'd both be sacrificing equity like crazy just to get the type of board that we wanted. Where, I would have a 5-tile play that has a C or something like that, and I would open with the C in the middle of the board and sacrifice points just to make sure the board was closed, and then Dave would sacrifice points to open it, and eventually one of us would win, and it's not like the other person is inept at their respective style. Dave can still play on a closed board, I can still play on an open board, but
it's tighter though.
you just really want to be careful when you're sacrificing points and leave in general to make sure that that sacrifice has some sort of benefit to it. Whether it's trying to make your opponent play worse, whether it's a style that you're more comfortable with, and you're not just doing it randomly. You don't want to just open the board against everybody. There's not really a reason to. And you don't really want to open the board when you're ahead. It doesn't really make sense. Like, you can do it, and you can outrun a lot of the time. And especially if you're playing Collins, you can outrun a lot of the time. Most of Collins' theory isn't really trying to keep the board restricted. It's trying to close the board in a different way, if you're trying to close the board at all. But yeah, you could certainly. It's a lot better to try to force the board open rather than try to force the board closed. Forcing the board closed requires a lot more precision than forcing the board open. You can make more mistakes when you're trying to force the board open and get away with them. But you are sacrificing points at the end of the day, and so if you're playing somebody who's equally as good and you're forcing the board open and they're just playing naturally, then they're going to win 6 or 8% more often than you are. Sid opens pretty quickly, plays Unify. Again, pretty standard, not really much to say. Jackson with a kind of clunky rack. Not really bad, but not really much to do that's great. Expect to see either Croupy or Flub come down. Those are really the 2 best options. Croupy is BL, which is actually one of the best synergies in Scrabble. Neither the B or the L are particularly good, but they actually do work quite well together. Much better than most people seem to give it credit for. The L is by far the best tile that the B can see that's not like an S or a blank. Just works so much better than like BR or BT or any of those sorts of combinations. So yeah, kind of expecting Croupy to come down mostly for that reason. Flub is okay. CROP is not exactly the best leave. But yeah. There are other options too. If you really, really, really care about leave, you could play Upboil. That's the best leave, but that just sacrifices a lot of points. You could play Colby, I guess. You don't really want to keep the U unless you have to. And really, Croupy is just better in every way than Colby, so I don't think I would ever play Colby. Jackson does play Croupy. Makes a lot of sense. I expect Sid to play Keebla, probably. Yeah, or Burka, actually. Sorry, yeah. He has Burka that Croupy just opened. I didn't see that. But yeah, he almost has it lined up in his rack, so I'm sure that Sid sees it pretty quickly. Yeah. Burka comes down. Not really much to think about in this rack either, I believe. It's just going to be Caliph pretty much immediately. 36 points, sets up Biz next turn for 40, which is always a good thing. You always want to have a play lined up. If you have a play with your 3-tile leave that scores 40 points, then most of the time your rack is just going to get better. It's not going to get worse, so yeah. Jackson has Kaif lined up. Hopefully he adds on the L. It would be a pretty big mistake if he doesn't add the L here. Not really because of the 3 points, but mostly because of the Biz spot that it sets up. BIZ is not particularly good, and the Z is not particularly good on this board until you make that spot. So I would like to see Caliph come down. You do want to block the A, though. You would much rather play Caliph than Flick because of that. Boy, he does play Kaif. Okay, that's a pretty big error. I'm almost certain he would have played Caliph if he saw it. It's just better in every single way. It's not like a huge mistake, but it's just one of those plays where the alternative is just better in every measurable metric. But I'm pretty sure even he would say that was a mistake. I don't think there was any thought behind that that made that play better. It is Max lined up. I would consider if I were him, I would also play Vex. I think that fits a lot better with Sid's style. Vex doesn't really open anything at all. That leaves the entire board dead to 7s. There's no XUS. There's no nothing. And Jackson's rack is pretty decent, or his range is pretty decent. So I actually would expect Vex to be played, and I'm a little confused as to why he's not. Maybe he just doesn't see it as an option. Equity Z. I don't know if equity is a command, Mo Allen. If you want just an estimate, ZIBL is about 4, give or take. In terms of equity, maybe 3.5. Sid does play exam. Again, I think this is one of those times he just doesn't see Vex. Vex would just be a lot better. It gets rid of the V. Doesn't think that E is a place to play bingo as a 7. So I think he just probably missed it. We can ask afterwards, but I'm going to guess that he just missed it. Jackson, I think, has banalized, right? That last tile's a B, is a D. So if that's a D, he has a bingo here. Maybe it's something else I don't see. Oh, he's Blizzard. Okay. Yeah, he also has Blizzard. Banalized does fit. Blizzard is actually a better play. It sacrifices 1 point, but it keeps the board much more restricted. Sid's range could be pretty decent. It doesn't turn out to be. It kept JLV, but there's no way for Jackson to know that. He could easily have something like EST. So for that reason, I think Blizzard is a better play. He makes the second Z a blank. All right. Sid plays Jib. I think if I were him, I would have played Vigil. This might be a little bit too defensive given the score, but Jib is reasonable if you don't see Vigil quickly. But I do think that Sid is playing some of these trends a little bit too fast. I think he may have considered Vigil if he saw it. Maybe he saw it immediately and rejected it. I don't really know. But yeah. Sid's obviously in a lot of trouble here. Openness comes down. Yeah, not going to be a lot of options for him to come back here. This is the other problem with playing Sid's style in general, is that if your opponent gets the lead, well, you're still in the same situation. Just in reverse. So now what are you going to do? Because the board's pretty dead, and you don't have anything. Again, I think the best play for Sid is probably Vigil. We'll see if he sees it this time. Yeah, he does. So he probably did see Vigil last turn and just didn't want to play it, which is interesting. As other options, at this point I would say that you need to open the board. I would play something like Livre or something like that. I think Vellager is just too closed. I think that Vigil is okay, but it's just going to lead to the board being closed. I really think that you need to play something like Livre, maybe Rive, something that opens the board a little bit. I think that if you don't open the board now, you're never going to get to do it because Jackson's just going to close things down. Like, just because you're playing a closed board doesn't mean that the opponent is going to play a closed board if they get ahead, and that's exactly what's happened here. But, yeah. He does have Vellager. Vellager does clean up the rack. It does kill the E and the S, though, which are the two best lines, which isn't ideal, but, you know, it does score decently, and it does open the board. It doesn't really open the board. The V is a terrible tile because you can't parallel it. But it's at least okay. Even if it doesn't open anything immediately, it opens up space. It accesses the bottom left in terms of space. You can play through the V, E, L, and Vellager and then open that way. So at least that's something, as opposed to letting Jackson parallel it on the right, and then you never get to open that area of the board anyway. So at least it does something productive in terms of opening, even if it doesn't open anything immediately. I still would much prefer to see something like Livre come down, personally. Livre over Rive, mostly because you have an R, so opening an R in space isn't really good for you. So hiding that R a little bit makes a lot of sense. And you have the R for Jiber as well. And just 2 constants instead of 3 is just better. But he does go with Vellager. I think that's at least okay. There are some possibilities to opening the board in the medium to long-term future here. Jackson's rack is not particularly good. He does have some scoring options that are at least all right. He has Cow. He has Uzo. Probably going to see one of those come down. He has Uzo lined up. Uzo does set up his W as well. He has AW next turn for 26, which isn't a lot, but it is something. It always is nice to have a guaranteed play next turn, kind of like I was saying with Caliph before. It's not like something that's you're going to sacrifice like a bunch of points for, but if it's close enough to the best play anyway. And in this case, Uzo does clear up the rack and score 14 points, which is as good as you're going to do here. The W fitting in that spot is just a nice little bonus. As you can see, Sid did draw the second blank, so some hope. Again, since the board is dead, there's not going to be any great place to play that blank. In all likelihood, at least not in the short term. That is a good enough rack to bingo on most turns, but in this case, we'll have to see. I don't see anything there immediately. There might be something there, though. Let's see. Nope, nothing there. Just stuff like stuff in that quadrant mostly. And again, this is the problem with playing this style. Because on more sports, you're going to be able to play a bingo here with this rack. But on this board, not so much. And even if after you balance, even if you play something like called, you still might not get something because the 7s lanes and the 8s lanes are just bad. And even the 8s lanes that exist, they don't score very well. So because of those two factors, it's just, I'm maybe over harping on this, but it's just very, very difficult on a board like this. So whoever gets the lead early on a closed board generally has just a huge advantage. I'm expecting call to come down. You can make a case for actually playing something like alls, but that just opens up and just guarantees scoring so effectively that may not be worth it. And the S, even though there aren't really good S lanes, one could be created, and the S is still just a good tile just to play a bingo on its own, so. He does have alls lined up. It certainly would make some sense. I mean, again, the S doesn't have that much value here because there's no S hooks, and there's not, like, Jackson's not going to create one, so the only way that the S hook is going to mean anything is if Sid makes one, which he could do, but Jackson likely has one. If he doesn't even, it's likely to be blocked, so. Now he has Lars instead. I really prefer alls. I think Lars is a lot easier to make a big play on the triple word score. It's a lot harder after alls for a lot of different reasons. Even though there are a lot of ways to parallel that, you can only parallel it with like a 2-tile play. And in terms of hitting the double letter triple word combination, the L is just a lot easier than the A. Just in terms of the way that words combine. So I think alls is probably the best play. Or call if you don't want to spend the S. I probably would end up spending the S here. He does need the points pretty desperately. Even with alls, he's probably still going to be behind if he hits a bingo next turn, just because the bingos in this board, they score like 65. So, they just don't score enough. And the leave is just better as well. I'm talking about blizzards, Bynack. I don't think you should be opening the board in that way. It's just going to get closed again if you do it as well, and you're killing the E spot. So the board's going to be really, really dead if you play alls and jibs. And this just scores more. He does go with call, which I think is, again, a reasonable option. But a lot to think about. Again, really close between call and alls. I think I would have been okay with either option. Jackson, AAEIRWS. Ends up going with wage. Could have played. He plays that pretty quickly too. He could have played warrior on the right side. I think that's probably what I would have played. I think that's probably just a better version of wage. So I do think this is probably also a miss by Jackson. Could play AW as well if he wants to just go full on bingo. The board is likely to be opened because Sid's not going to just sit there. But yeah, he does go with wage. Sid hits a bingo. Plays greatest. Again, he's behind after this, so he could have played something a little bit more open, and I probably would have preferred it. Something like Gastria, for example, I think makes a lot of sense. Because otherwise, I mean, it wouldn't have worked in this case, but I do think that in terms of a line, it's a better option than to play greatest. But this is going to end up working out a lot better. Jackson doesn't have any really great plays, but Sid's behind still. He's still behind by 11 and turn against a range that's much stronger than his. So I'm not sure I necessarily like this as a line, even though it is going to work out in the short term. Jackson would learn a lot of bingos. He's very, very close to a bingo, obviously, but it doesn't mean that he's going to try to hit it. Because again, bingos often don't play. Even if they do, they don't score that well. So it actually would make a lot of sense for Jackson just to take points here. So yeah. Quackle's going to say you should play something like J.O., but I probably just wouldn't. I'd probably play something a little bit more... something that plays a little bit more tile, something like Odier. Makes a lot of sense. Keep the last S. The S still works with Blizzard, still works with Jibs. You're still going to be pretty far in front. The O and the A are not really bingo threats, so I think that's the play I would probably make, or probably expect Jackson to make. There are other options that are sort of similar to that, but I think that's probably the best version. Yeah, Odier does come down. Again, not what Quackle would do, not what the engine would do, at least initially, but I think clearly the best play. And this is pretty tough for Sid. Even though he's only behind by 40, like, trying to get another bingo down on this board is going to be really rough. He can't really afford to fish. The only line really is above exam, and that's not even a very good line. You can't end an S, for example, over there. It does have some good scoring options, though. Mostly using the Y in Blizzardy. And he doesn't play it. I am guessing he does not know it. I don't think he would do that on purpose. I could be wrong, but I don't think that was on purpose. I think he just wasn't sure of it or doesn't know it. So plays Coney. I think that's a pretty drastic error. I don't think you can justify doing that on purpose. He may have had an idea it was a word, but I think that he just didn't know and didn't feel comfortable playing it and was willing to sacrifice 15 in points / equity, which is a lot in this case. When bingos are unlikely, giving away 15 points in just pure score, that's rough. But yeah. Jackson with a very strong rack here. Sid's gonna need to bingo to win. Like, it's gonna be, at this point, it's gonna be really tough to outscore. Jackson has the S. He's gonna be able to score pretty much incessantly. The board is not gonna get any better for bingos either. This is about as good of a board as it's gonna be. He's gonna probably have to bingo to like the C in Coney or something bizarre. It's not gonna get any better. Any opening is just better than this. Jackson plays OW. Makes a lot of sense. He could obviously score more with something like Wove, but he's just not going to do that. He's not going to open the board in that way. And if Sid tries to do that, it's just going to get blocked every single time, which I expect may happen in the next upcoming turns. It's very, very predictable.
261.
So in these sorts of situations, you're trying to figure out a way to open the board in a way that's difficult to close. So you're not going to be... You might think, oh, well, Doge, that does a good job. It opens the board. But it's just so easy to close Doge. You just play above Doge. You play a 3-tile play above Doge, score roughly the same number of points. And now you're back to a board that's even worse than you started. So you don't really want to be doing that. You need to be a lot more careful in terms of how you open the board in these sorts of situations. So Yeah, you just want to be very, very mindful of what you're doing and how you're doing it. So instead of something like Doge, you might want to be playing something like, I don't know, VE, for example, or Ego. So it goes with DE, which is, he has the O, and that's a lot easier to close. So, it makes some sense. There are still ways to close that, but it's difficult. So from that sense, I think that's at least a reasonable option. And yeah, Jackson does not have. Yeah, it's the case O too. Although it's not likely to stay there regardless. I would be very shocked if that ever stays there with almost any range, unless Jackson tries to outrun. But he's not ahead enough to try to outrun a bingo. He's going to try to block. Not the easiest thing to try to block though. And he might have to actually take the points here and play something like Ivy's, which he has lined up. But if you're just going to block, he's going to have to score like 8 points, which may be worth it. Like, he could block with something like, I don't know, Dewey. Like, that does block, but is that really worth it? Maybe. I mean, it's possible. He could also create worse floaters. Like, the IV is an okay floater. He can sacrifice some leave, and he can play Uvias and leave worse lines for his opponent. It's a lot harder to bingo through the U and the V than the I and the V. The U is just a much worse floater, but then he has to keep 2 I's. Still might be worth it. Might be worth it. I personally would use a lot of time here just to try to figure out and weigh all of these options. He could be really defensive and just go all in on this play Voss. That's really defensive. That makes it almost impossible, but he's keeping EIIU. But there's no way for Sid to know that he's keeping EIIU, and he's going to try to open again, and it's probably not going to work. And again, you don't really need the tiles for scoring. If Jackson has to sacrifice points to block in the next few turns, he's okay doing that. Voss is going to leave him ahead by, 45 or 50. So really might be the best option here as well. Voss doesn't take anything. The only front hook is a K, and there are no Ks left. And there's no blanks left. So that's reasonable as well. So that's the kind of thing he's probably thinking about, whether he can weather bad draws after this turn if he plays something like Voss, or whether he needs to sacrifice, whether he needs to take the risk and play something like Uvias or Ivies. It's a very difficult decision. I'm not yet sure what I would be doing. Right now, I'm kind of leaning against Ivies, and I would probably play either Uvias or Voss. And I'm not sure which one yet. Really not sure. Yeah. Yeah. When you're looking at these sorts of plays like Voss, you're looking, okay, what's my opponent going to do next turn to open? And I mean, most of them are going to be underlaps to unify. And with my rack, I can't really block that with what I have, and that leaves me really concerned. Like, really, really concerned. I guess you can play down from the V and Uvia to block that. So I guess it's not that bad, but they're going to have bingo lines still. But you can draw stuff that might work. And that assumes that they're going to make that play and that you can't do anything. So I think this is probably fine. I would still be thinking, if I'm being perfectly honest, but this is one of the two options I would be thinking about, and probably the one I'm leaning towards slightly right now, but very difficult decision. Yeah. Sid, again, not in the greatest of shape. Probably going to drop the G here, something like that. If Nodier were a word, he'd have Stegodon in that spot. Almost plays. There are also things he can hit to the C here, but the problem is if he fishes for them, he might not score enough even if he hits them. So, yeah, probably not going to be something like that. Mostly just going to be trying to do whatever opens the board the best. He can't play something like dog here. It's just not going to work. Could play nog here, maybe, and leave this kind of weak line for his S. It's at least okay, but probably not worth it. Mig is just going to induce a block here. That's not great, actually. And it's going to also induce a block in that spot. Really bad options to try to open the board here. Almost anything that Sid does can be blocked, which is a problem. Usually what you're doing is you're looking for like the worst possible lane trying to hit it. So you're looking at this C and Coney. You're looking even at like WE and wages. And then trying to like create a secondary spot knowing it's going to get blocked. Maybe what you could do here is actually play Vast. Even though you don't have the A, and try to set up the Avast spot and make your opponent do something about it. That actually is probably where I'm leaning towards right now. Even though you don't have it, you need to set up something that's threatening, that's difficult to block, and Avast is about as good as you're going to do on that front. And yeah, you don't have it, but it's likely Jackson doesn't have it either. If Jackson had it, he would have played Vasa last turn. So you know that more likely than not, Jackson does not have an A here, the case A. So I think that setting up Voss and making what I would call a fake setup is actually probably the best option. And maybe Jackson will do something kind of extreme to try to block it, even though it doesn't exist, because Jackson doesn't know he doesn't have it. But this is the kind of complicated play that you're going to need to make in these sorts of situations. And it looks desperate, because Jackson could have drawn an A. And sometimes he just has the A from last turn. Maybe he had a consonant heavy rack. But I think that that's the play that needs to be made here, at least of the options I see, because any other potential play that Sid's going to make is just going to get blocked immediately. And I don't even see a way to fish off one tile and hit something, and even if he hits something, it's not going to win, so... Yeah, he's looking at fishing the G here. I just don't know what he's hitting. Like, he can fish the G all he wants and play Go or something, or Dag. It's not going to win him the game if he hits them. I don't think there's anything to the C or the WE that he can hit. Might be wrong. Maybe he's looking at MIG or something and then just letting his opponent... Yeah, he's playing MIG. So it's going to get blocked by a short play, like ME underneath. But again, he's not very good options. What does he play if he fishes? He doesn't. He just keeps fishing. But he can keep fishing by neck. That's the thing. He's not going to... There's 10 tiles in the bag, so there's not any reason to hit something immediately. He just needs to hit the A so that he has an option to do something. And most of the time by neck, he's not actually going to have an option to do something. Jackson's going to try to block. And by trying to block, he's going to open something worse, but at least he opens something. Because there's no good way of blocking the Vast Hook. The Avast Hook. Like, there's just nothing good to do. He has to do something like play above Deli, play above with the I, or play to the V, and most likely play to the V in Vas and go down. And that's going to open things himself, and then Sid can work from that. But I assure you that if if Sid does play Vast, Jackson's not going to just leave the Avast hook. He's going to probably try to play something like Vayne or Vim or something that tries to block that spot and open other things in the future. So just because he doesn't actually have anything to hit doesn't actually matter, as unintuitive as that might be. Experts do this a lot, actually, where they fish. They don't actually... They create a setup that doesn't actually set up anything, but they know it's their only real option, and so they do it anyway. Just because their opponent, it may induce a reaction that
I can't count. Okay.
completely misleads the range.
Mm.
Anyway, Sid does play MIG, drops the G. I expect that Jackson's going to play relatively quickly. There's not much to think about here. Always going to be blocked. Almost always going to be ME here underneath that. Wait, what? EEIMNU. Oh, okay. Yeah, ME comes down fairly quickly. Maybe there was something he could hit, or maybe he was just hoping to hit something and didn't see what he could hit. But yeah. It draws an attendance, it doesn't play. I still think that you need to be doing something like Vast. Not because I love it, because there's just not really any good options here. Again, probably maybe actually trying to hit the C, something like Stenotic or something. He might just be giving up here, honestly. Like, Dovin is kind of a give-up play, if I'm being frank. There's no way to do anything after Dovin. I guess there are long shot outs, maybe, sort of, if you draw perfectly and Jackson draws the exact wrong thing, but I don't think Dovin ever wins. Because now your hook is the S that's going to be easily blocked. You can't outrun it. Even if Jackson plays something, just for example, like nuts to the N in Dovin for 3, like what's... I guess he could hit the C in Coney, maybe, still? Jackson knows he can't because he has all the eyes, but... Yeah, this is just going to be purely a blocking play from Jackson. Maybe Unit would be a better version of that. Yeah, Unit would be a better version of that. And yeah, there's nothing for Sid to ever hit. Like, after Unit, I guess he can still parallel under that somehow, maybe? Like, NSTE something? I don't think there's anything in this pool, but in theory there might be. Here's the pool from Jackson's perspective, if you're interested. But I think that's mostly give up play. Like, I mean, the situation is pretty dire. But I think there was still some potential to get back in that game. Likely not. Like, likely Sid would have still lost, but I don't think that it was, the chances were 0. I think there were a little higher than 0. Is there anything that actually fits there? That after Unit? I don't think so. There's stuff that's kind of close, but yeah. And this is kind of the problem with DE in a nutshell. I mean, it's not like he would have had very many options anyway, but as you can see, DE actually made Sid's life harder, not easier, because of the fact that you have to take into account your opponent's options. And when you take into account your opponent's options, it no longer looks nearly as appealing. Jackson's just going to ignore it entirely. That looks risky to me, honestly. I don't think he can do that. Like, I guess it's not likely that it gets hit, but it's possible. At the very least, there's Harshen in... Oh, I'm sorry, there's 2 H's in that pool. So at the very least, there's Harshen that he can hit. That's the pool, sorry. So I would have liked to see Unit there, but... Oh, we ended up playing IT underneath. I mean, I still would have liked to see Unit there. I guess there's maybe he's a little bit afraid of being outrun, which I guess is possible. But pretty unlikely. Justin draws Uridine just because... Yeah, I guess I don't mind IT. I guess it's theoretically possible, not easy to see how, but theoretically possible that if you draw like the absolute stone worst, you could get outdrawn and outrun, but I don't think it's possible. We could run through the worst case scenario maybe, but I just don't see it. Sid just plays off an H, doesn't really have any hope of winning this game, but has to try. I don't even think there's a 7 that he hits there ever, or an 8. I could be wrong, but yeah. He draws the A, which is the tile he needed to draw a while ago, but it's too late now. It probably would have been too late beforehand. I guess you never know. Like, maybe Jackson can make a mistake and open something somehow. Maybe open an I in the middle of the board and leave hesitant or something. It's always possible, I guess. But yeah, unless Jackson does something like that, he's not going to lose this game. But he is short on time. I mean, I guess so is Sid. Sid just had to make a decision at that point. I don't blame him. It's pretty hard to come up with what to do when you know that any single play that you do to open is going to get blocked. Sid would have liked that A for like Anna, I guess, but even that wouldn't have ended up working out. But a lot harder to block that than some of the other things. You'll fix the unseen letters soon. Yeah, maybe on another stream. It's hard to fix the unseen letters in a way that's easy. All right, Jackson just plays ID. They're just gonna play, something that scores okay, and yeah, just plays Hant. Jackson's just gonna play, I don't know, Triune maybe or something. Yeah. So it is now 5-4 in Jackson's favor.
Yeah, I messed up. Really
Kind of
bad
interesting
on
game.
the-
I do, like I said, I maybe was a little bit too critical of his decisions, but very interesting decisions. For me, like the way that I play Scrabble is much more similar to Jackson than Sid, so for me it's less interesting to talk about, I guess. But yeah, I do like closed boards a lot more just because I think that they involve a lot more thought and a lot more subtlety to them. And I do try to play them like I would consider myself a more closed player than most, but not nearly to the degree of Sid. It just depends. There are a lot of players out there who just open the board every single game and just try to like outword knowledge people. And if somebody plays an open style and finds all the words consistently and always finds the best play, there's only so much you can do, really. You know what? If somebody knows enough words and is even respectable at strategy, you can't just try to out-strategize your way through them. At the end of the day, word knowledge is going to win. As long as they know anything. I mean, Hastybot's a great example of that. Hastybot has no strategy whatsoever. Yeah, no, I am describing Hastybot in a nutshell. But there are human players who play like Hastybot. But Hastybot does awfully well and beats a lot of players a lot of the time. Very, 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 very few players are favored against Hastybot. If you can go through Hastybot's record and try to find somebody who beats Hastybot more often than not. I'm not going to talk about individual players that much. I mean,
like I saw Transact, which is I'm like,
but yeah, there are players out there who definitely play a more closed version.
I considered untie.
And who play a more open version.
I don't even know if you have anything for with the S there. Trashed, I guess.
Oh yeah.
You've trashed.
That's kind of important to block.
Yeah, it kind of is, really.
You can talk about who those people are when you're streaming.
I don't think
Joey.
it's possible. Blizzards?
I will decline
Oh,
for
Vlad,
now.
do you consider Blizzardy?
No,
Yeah. I think it's good, right? I was gonna play it.
They're
How would you
postmorteming.
decide?
I don't really know it about. I am not a postmortemer for what it's
well,
worth.
Drew's was. So.
Yeah.
A lot of people do postmortem
Yeah,
after
so
every
it's
game. They like to
obvious-
talk about
oh,
every game for like 10 minutes.
obviously
I
the
do
play.
not.
Um,
Mostly because I dread getting asked
Fucking
questions
Blizzard,
because
dude.
a lot of the times the situation I run into
That's
in
like the
games is
game
like
thing.
people ask me a question, but
Not
they don't
knowing
not really asking me a
Blizzard.
question. What they're asking for is approval that they did the right thing. And in
Yeah,
those situations, you
ENS,
just have
like
to
the
give it to
fourth
them,
part
even
of
if
the
you're
year or something,
lying. And I don't like to
ENS,
lie.
ENNS.
So it's like somebody's like, "Oh, well, what did you think of this play?" And like my real answer is that play was shit. I play in that sort of situation. It's always just like, "Oh yeah, no, that seemed reasonable," and I'm just lying. And all of us, whenever we postmortem, especially the top players, we're usually just lying. And I'd rather just not lie. I'd rather just not talk. If you have a real question about the game, you can always ask me like after the tournament. You can ask me after the day is over. If you're asking me a real question, and sometimes people do ask me real questions, and if they do, I'll answer. But um, yeah, I just don't. You know, I'm not somebody who can just sit there and lie. Um, and I don't want to feel like I don't want to say something and get into an altercation, and then they get mad at me, and then for the next 3 hours I feel bad about it. That's happened a few times where it's just like, oh well, it's less like, what would you do in this situation? If I say something else, then they get angry, and then I feel bad, and then it's just like, oh fuck me.
I mean,
Um,
Villager, like.
so yeah,
Yeah, I've
people
seen
don't
that
necessarily
before,
take
definitely.
criticism that well,
Well, yeah, I
and
mean,
I don't want to
just,
lie, and so
like-
I just don't talk.
Yeah, I didn't want to play Vigil keeping ERR.
Yeah.
I mean, you play Vigil.
And I play in Baltimore.
keeping
I don't even know if
ERR.
Baltimore's
I
happening,
was gonna
Joey.
play Vigil keeping ERR.
And even if it does, I don't know if there's gonna be a prize
you just
pool. I don't know.
parallel open a
I don't know
thing.
anything. So I don't know is the
Just
answer.
like you can like parallel, or you can just play to the E and then the.
If it happens and it gets a 10K prize pool, I will strongly consider it. I highly doubt both of
You're
those.
going to anyway.
Why would it be canceled? Because older players, Joey, do not want to go into credit conventions of 200 people. In a nutshell. A lot of people are not going to be comfortable playing in a room with 200 other people, especially when,
Jackson winner.
especially for a game where they have to pay lots of money to. They don't have to do that and then fly and then pay the cost for a hotel room, which also doesn't feel all that safe to a lot of people. You're gonna have to play and wear a mask. I might not be popular to say this, but like if I have to wear a mask playing, I will. And I am vaccinated. I don't have an issue with that. But like, I won't say that playing with a mask for 5 days straight is something I would look forward to doing. Is there even a chance for a 10K? It's possible. It's not likely. I wouldn't bet on it, but I wouldn't say it's impossible. But I'm not. I'm not interested in playing Baltimore for where it's like $1,000 for first. I will tell you right now, I am not interested. If I'm paying and first prize is for the flight, I'm just not interested at all. And a lot of people aren't either. And so yeah, if you put up money and preferably if you also publicize it, like if they're actually going to have it on stream, which they may or may not do. I don't know what NASPA is planning, and anybody who knows me knows, JMC is one of the people who actually makes these decisions, but I don't know what they're going to do. I don't think anybody knows what they're going to do, and I'm not exactly gung-ho about the way that things are being handled right now, if anybody knows those sorts of things. So we'll see. I don't even know what dictionary you're playing in a year, to be honest.
I just bumped in and moved.
We might all be playing columns in a year. I have no idea. I don't control those decisions. The people who are putting money are not NASPA either. The people who are putting money in are other people who I will let other people surmise, but
Series are not over though.
Did you
That
win?
one the last one.
yeah, it could happen.
There you
I don't know. We'll see what happens. We'll see what they decide. I don't know. I don't have the power to make those decisions.
Yeah.
He's 5-4.
But there are other exciting opportunities that are Collins related that are out there that are more concrete than the opportunities in NWL. So,
He won 4 in a row, and then I won 1 in a
and not to mention that I think publicity without the trademark is going to be an absolute nightmare.
plus. It's
So
just
maybe
live
the
stream,
fact that
so-
we're playing in a stream, it may be the fact that Baltimore is a tournament where the first prize is like $2,500, where it's not streamed, where nobody cares who wins,
But I closed
and
the
there's
door
no
for that
media
one.
release whatsoever. So if you win, maybe you'll get something in the local newspaper at best. And
Wait, what?
you know,
Like,
yeah,
I
you've
played
streamed it the
Bellator
last
one
couple of
time,
years,
like,
Judy, but
Okay.
you had more
I
people
don't
going
play
the last
Bellator
couple of
with
years.
DRR, but, like,
Maybe. I don't know. I don't think you know either. Right now, it's not certain. It depends. I'm assuming, Judy, it's going to depend on how many people show up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would hope so anyway. And we don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
We just don't know the answer
Watch
to
the
that.
stream on Tuesday, and you can see. Like,
So, I don't know.
talking about
maybe.
how shitty Bellator is.
I don't.
It's cool. Alright,
Blizzard
you
is
guys
cool.
I don't want to get
But
too
I had
negative on stream
Collie,
when I don't know
for
what's
like
going to happen.
40, and I didn't play it 'cause I didn't
But
get
I
it.
know that there are
Blizzard?
things happening in
Yeah.
Collins. I will say that. And even if I
Oh,
can't
isn't
talk
that
about them,
Buzzard?
I know that they are happening.
No.
Because there are lots of people who
I guess it's not.
have made
Well, I
sure,
guess I
who have
played
ensured
Dunkery a
me
couple rounds,
privately
I guess,
that
so,
there are going to be other tournaments that are a lot more optimistic.
Okay.
You took my
So
sword.
Noah's beat Josh. Congratulations to Noah. That also means that this will be on stream for the next at least 2 games,
Oh man.
maybe 3.
It's 2 to win 1. Or 1 to win 2.
Which tournaments will be more optimistic? Collins tournaments. I will tell you that much. Adam. Collins tournaments.
I still make the finals, but then I'd have to beat Noah in a fucking series. Like that's.
You can message some people privately. They're not official, so I can't talk about them. But Collins
Like
tournaments.
if I beat you 2 in a row,
Collins
like,
tournaments
I'm
are much.
kind of maybe.
I think it will surprise nobody here that I'm much more fond of playing NWL, and even I am strongly considering switching to Collins. Not because of Collins, but because NWL is looking pretty bleak right now, and Collins is not.
But then you won 6-3.
So like, I'm just saying like if I beat you 2 in a
Yeah,
row,
Josh, you can now just you can just you just commentate all of your thing and play at the same time.
Depends what happens tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, New Orleans is a fun tournament, by Nick. It's not a tournament you play for money, but it's a fun tournament.
Yeah, Mig was terrible.
I mean, most of the people who are playing it are drunk, so it's not like the best players in the world, but is any NWL tournament the best players in the world right now?
I'm fine with Bellator.
You know, who's the... Yeah. This isn't a great topic to talk about in Josh's stream, so I won't. I don't want to talk about controversial things, but, like, let's be real about this. Like, I don't know whether tournaments right now are going to feature the best players in the world, or even the best players in North America. We'll see. We'll see.
I'm facing elimination.
Elimination? What's that?
Oh yeah.
I wish I was a little bit more optimistic about NWO. I'm just not. Hopefully, Judy, if you're out there, hopefully you can prove me wrong. But judging from what John said on Facebook and what John has said privately, I doubt it.
It's gotten more interesting. Right? The first 7 were terrible. Well, the first like
you guys
6
need
were
to
bad.
cover.
Why am I bothering to offer commentary
yeah, I
here?
just noticed
Because
that.
people want to know what I think,
Actually, like, I came
and because I feel like talking about it.
No one will beat like Josh and
Collins is looking very good. I will completely acknowledge the Collins community will be okay. They will 100% be okay.
Did I forget?
I
think I did. Oh no.
And there are other people not involved with NASPA directly, but
you just
indirectly,
went
who are working very hard on it.
But yeah, I was going remotely, and I thought you'd forgotten. Oh, sorry, I might be a little loud compared to Kenji.
I have to break serve to avoid elimination.
Dude, we've been
That's serve
winning
jokes.
off serve so much.
Let me check.
Oh no, I'm not ready. I don't mind.
Yeah.
All right, see you later, Bynek. Go Giants, boo Dodgers. The Giants and the Dodgers are the two best teams by record by like far right now. They're easily the two best teams out there.
Fuck that. Hate that word.
I mean, JMC, if you want to talk off stream, we can. I don't. I don't think it's right for me to talk. I've already said probably too much for your liking, but I can. We can talk about it off stream if you want.
That's no excuse.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's no excuse. I could do better, but like I said on stream, I'm throwing for
I
content.
need a woo.
Yeah. If people aren't
Oh,
supposed to
foundering.
that's a bad thing. Like this is like
Yes, our wonderful dictionary has lookets and floriats. You guys can both. You can Google both of those words if you like. Not exactly the pride of. Not exactly in CEL. Not exactly common words. But. Yeah. We do have some words that are longer that are pretty good. I think activewear is totally a legit word, for example. There are some words that I can be proud of in NWL.
Actually, I guess it's not that funny. Anything to... No.
Whereas this is not one of them. If you want, you can go to my blog. Like, my blog actually has the list of all the NWL words that are actually reasonable. But there are plenty of them. I can go and look right now if anybody cares. Let's see. What are the reasonable NWL only words? Babysitter. Babysitter is a perfectly legitimate word. I totally cherrywood. Mouth guard. Multitasker. Proactively. Pepperoncini. Laundromat. Lightspeed. Goosebumps. Deal making. Customizable. Teleprompter. Like, those are, to me, all of those are very legit words. Like, I don't see why those are not in Collins. We do have some reasonable words, okay? Those are all in NWL. Yes, those are all NWL only. Those are not Collins. They just haven't been added yet. You've had time, physics. You've had time. I don't, there are more than that, Nightlight. Water slide. These have been words. These haven't just been words for like the last 5 years, St. Monday, though. They've been words for decades, at least in my book. These have all been words for decades. Snickerdoodle. These should have been words a long time ago. I mean, yeah, you guys are better, much, much better at this, obviously. But let's not pretend like you have all the words that are legit. There are also words that are not in either dictionary that are perfectly legit. Yeah, blogs keeping RS. I'm not even going to commentate that play. It's just obviously the best play. It's not even interesting. So no really great options on this rack. You pay me to commentate. Yeah. So this is just going to come down to what Sid wants to do with the board. Because all of the plays score like nothing. The highest scoring play on this board, oh, he played vertically. I have to change that. Josh is going to be very mad at me for orienting the play incorrectly. So the highest scoring play is actually Reeler, and that's not going to happen because it takes an S, and that's 12 points. What did I say, Saint Monte, other than maybe annoying Naspa a little bit, which I do every single time I talk because it's basically all I can do. What did I say that's controversial? Other than the fact that I might not go to Baltimore because I don't think it's going to pay anything. And I think that a lot of people aren't going to go because of COVID. I don't think that's controversial. Oh, I said dinosaurs. Yeah, that's true. I did say dinosaurs or hoax. Josh, I'm holding back because I'm on your stream. I would say a lot more controversial things on my own stream. If you want controversy about Scrabble, I can go on and on and on. I'm not going to do it to. I'm not going to say everything I want to say because of the fact I'm on. Because I have my own stream, and if I want to say it, I can say it on my own. Right. Sid plays Leisure, probably to block the S in blogs mostly. Although Sid thinks about it, he should know Jackson has an S the majority of the time here, because otherwise Jackson would just play blog most of the time. So I don't think that's actually that big of a consideration. In fact, I think Sid should probably want the S open because it's more useful to him than it is to Jackson. But there wasn't really a great alternative there. It keeps a decent leave. It's perfectly reasonable. You only come to hear me rant. All right, Jackson plays Coilers. Again, I don't have anything interesting to say. Just clearly the best play. The only play that scores more than 10, basically. Oh, somebody started a prediction. Yeah, I should be doing that. I guess I'm not really being a good commentator by not starting predictions. You should do commentary on like how bad my next rant will be, or how long I'm going to rant for, or whether I'm actually going to talk about the game. Sid draws a bingo. You would have held on to the problem, Elder Word, is that if you would have had to sacrifice over 20, like, what are you going to play? Coil? I mean, you could, I guess. You're sacrificing 24 points to play Coil on a board that may or may not even have an S hook next turn. Because Sid's going to just block if you play Coil. Low C, yeah, but Sid's just going to block, so it probably isn't worth it to sacrifice 24 points for that. 24 is a lot.
86 up.
So Sid plays Keratins, the only bingo that plays.
Yeah.
Jackson's going to bingo back. I'm going to even input the play because I don't think there's any chance on earth he misses it. Well, he might miss Citurn. He might miss Centrist and play Citurns. That's possible, I guess. I'm not expecting that to happen, but you have tried Stricton many times. I guess if you know there's 2 alphagrams, you might miss one of them and then force another one onto that. That seems doable. Maybe he'll try Tantrix or something. That's possible, I guess. No, if he plays Centrist. Right. I assume Myth or something like that's going to come down. Myth or Pfeiffer. When you're looking at these plays, you're mostly just looking, okay, do I have other spots for my other tiles that I am keeping? Is there a good spot for like the H or the P or the F? On this board, the answer is basically no. So there's not really any reason to prefer something based on future draws. So you're just going to make the play that scores and leaves the best. But let's say you wanted to keep the M, you might play something like Pfeiffer to keep the M if you thought it was particularly good in these sorts of situations. But this isn't one of those situations. Ooh, Svara, he doesn't block. Yeah, but it's going to get blocked almost every time, I think. Svara also takes ISM, for example, for what it's worth. I know that never shows up, but Svarahism is a word as well. Which surely is going to show up in every one of your games now that I've mentioned it. Bonehead, Noah won 6-3. Myth comes down. Avarejo. All right. Josh, if it goes 3-0 and then 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, how does that end up working? I'm just curious. Like, let's say Jackson wins this and then Jackson plays you and Jackson wins. Or let's say that Sid wins and then Sid beats Noah and then you beat Jackson. Oh, it goes by total number of games won? Okay. So theoretically you could still play in finals. But yeah, there's lots of like 3-0, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2s, and there's 2-1, 2-1, 2-1, 0-3 are all possibilities. So there's ways to make three-way ties that make the tiebreaker pretty relevant, actually. Not really great options for Jackson here. He's a G and jab and job, none of which are all that inspiring. I don't see a great way of making a setup. There might be one. Yeah, I'm not seeing it right now. So I guess just jab? You're not really thrilled about any of these. F4i for Sid next turn. Where does that even play that's any... Oh, under leisure. Yes. Obviously, we don't want something like S for trophies or something, but yeah, that's probably not going to happen. Yeah, it's 47 points. You don't look for better plays when you spot a 47-point play with EHIOPRT? I certainly do. I mean, I don't see anything better now, so I'm going to assume it's right. Jar comes down for Jackson. Seems fine. So yeah, F4i is the best play. It's not best by like an overwhelming amount of the time. Like, how much better is F4i really than Hop? I mean, I guess it is better. I mean, it certainly is better. There's no question about it. But, you know, if he makes some other play, it's not going to be devastating. Like, I guess if you miss it every single time, but I don't know. I don't get excited over 47-point plays with bingo prone tiles. And this is actually pretty bingo prone. Worth noting that the R on Sid's rack is actually the case R, even though we're really early in the game. So you do want to keep the R if you can. It's just a lot better than normal. Not worth it here, but yeah. Josh, how did it end up the case that you found a commentator who's more willing to criticize the players than I am? Because you managed to find one. I don't know how you did that, but You've managed to find somebody who's more critical than I am. It's really an accomplishment. Yeah, pretty much, Crafty. Pretty much. Here I am saying like, oh, well, if he misses it 4-eye, it's okay. It's like, no, best play, must play it. If they don't play it, they suck. Part of me looks at this OLI and leisure keratins and like, it's just like, what is the tens? And I'm looking like photo, photolier or something like that. Yeah, phoretic. There's some bingos in this actually if there are different open tiles. Yeah, I mean, I would be looking through EN even. I would be looking for nines here for sure. But yeah, it's just a 4-eye, unfortunately. Note how Jackson, on the other hand, as opposed to the other players on the stream, he has it lined up as like 4 and 3, and they don't mean anything. Like DUXA they're not lined up at all. She just has them at order. It's just sitting there watching and not really all that interested. It's just like, oh, I can alphabetize later. I kind of see what plays I have, but I'm not going to organize it in that order. I don't know. I feel like there's something more admirable or something in that. And then I like to make partitions that are just pure lies. Yeah, if he lines up his draw, then lines up his play. Usually lines up his play only after his opponent's at the clock. Looks like Hop is coming down. The only reason I admire everybody, Josh. I've actually said quite a few times that Jackson has made errors in the last game, Josh. I don't know if you've actually noticed that. I probably said that at least 3 times. But is the starts with command not working? Is the define bot not working? Or is it a different bot? I think it's a different bot. I think that's what's going on. So anyway, Jackson's up by 1. Oh, it's because of the prediction. Oh, right. Yeah, okay. Oh, does that mean I can do it? Okay, I can do this. Yeah, so I can do it because I'm not in the prediction. That makes sense. So Jackson is the X. There's not really a lot of good to do with the X, but it's not like he can draw much. It's not, I don't see any draws they can have. Both Fs are out, so 4X is dead. So he might just play X off with Rue here, maybe. Considering Mod, he has that lined up. I don't know what happens with VOEX here. Because Vortex? Or maybe EX plays? He's one tile away from Exuvia, maybe. So he plays off OD. He can draw one of the 7 eyes for Exuvia. So I guess he can think about that, but I don't think I could stomach making that play. I'm playing off DO. It's just not worth it. Exuvia doesn't happen often enough. It doesn't score enough when it does happen. Yeah, I think it's just Rue here. You can consider some other things as well. I mean, mod isn't bad. Foe isn't too bad. Jackson has Uvia lined up. I mean, Uvia does set up the X next turn. Only on the triple, though, so it's only going to be like 40. But it's not bad. Could do Avo under... Yeah, but that's a little bit too obvious, Elder Word. But it is a good idea. You'd probably play XU over XED. If there were a way to set up something else, I might do that. If you could set up his U in that way and make like an XU play where he gets rid of his U, I'd be more on board with that. Alright, Uvia does come down. So, Sid is the Y. I assume that something with Miffy is going to come down most of the time. I mean, he does... He is going to hit something there a lot. It's just... It's going to score like 40, so he's getting, you know, roughly 55 or 60 over 2 turns, which isn't bad. I just don't know if that's the best thing to do when you could just have Rue and then just score roughly, you know, you can get the same combo with some upside of bingos and such. But I think it's close. I don't think it's like, it's not gonna like change who wins the game. It's not like a definite mistake. There have definitely been bigger qualms that have with plays on both sides. Justin's gonna play immediately, plays DOUX, keeps MOY. Seems good. Could also played Mux, that would have been fine, but not really that much of a difference. Oh yeah, I haven't been doing that. What Josh, do you want that? I wasn't told that these games were supposed to be uploaded, so that's why I haven't been doing it. Am I supposed to do that? And if so, why? Yeah, okay. I didn't think so. Sid can make a setup here for his QI if he wants. It would be perfectly reasonable, I think. Could easily balance it as well. Safe play is just QI. I mean, just Pip. That's obviously the safe play. You could actually play DIT here, and it would not be terrible. Crafty, like, I know that Sid doesn't like his games uploaded across tables, so I would at least ask. I know that he got annoyed at me once for uploading a game against him. So I took it down and don't upload games against him. But, okay, I don't know. But yeah, I think these are all reasonable. Did is reasonable, Pip is reasonable, exchanging is reasonable. He just goes with Pip. Certainly not a mandatory play, but certainly one of the 3 reasonable options. Jackson has Goyim lined up. Goyim is taken out. I don't know what the rule is against that, Josh. I guess Goyim doesn't even play anywhere, does it? I want to say it's an O, but I don't know that for sure. I think this is his rack. Yeah, he can play. He can just have. He can just play Gobi. He can play Fu. The options aren't great here. Yum. If you want to get super creative, you can play FOG here. I don't think that's worth it, but you can think about it. Set up the Y for next turn. But you don't have the S, and Sid actually has a lot of S's in his range. Yeah, I know you've been playing Scrabble for 13 hours. It's one of the reasons why I was not particularly interested in playing Scrabble for this length of time. That's a long time. I think we're having trouble even streaming Scrabble for this long. 1 hour is enough for me. Yeah, I'll be honest, even at tournaments, like 4 or 5 day long tournaments, towards like the third or fourth day, I start not enjoying it very much anymore.
Yeah.
Jackson elects to set up his Y by playing or. I don't know if I agree with this really. It's 7 points. It looks like he's fishing. So he's probably going to induce a block, which is good, but still he's scoring 7 points and doesn't really have. He's setting up a play that scores like 30, so I'm not sure I'm really on board with this. It's an interesting option. It has some thought behind it, but probably not what I would be playing. You stop playing tourneys because every time you stop having fun again game 3. I usually last a little bit longer than that. Depends on how you're. Obviously, depends on how the games are going too, but it does get to be a grind. Around game. Usually at around day 3, I start feeling like it's a grind. Sometimes a little bit earlier, depending on who I'm playing, depending on how I'm playing, depending on how I'm drawing. But doing anything for 5 days straight is exhausting. Whether it's poker, chess, Scrabble, whatever. I can't do. Even things that I like doing, I can't do for that length of time.
Yeah.
Sid plays Twiner, keeping the Q. I don't really like this play. Cat is open through the A and Keratins if you don't want to exchange. I probably would have exchanged, but QAT is probably what I would be doing if I were to do that. If I were to play, I would also play Winter over that and at least give myself a QI out. Because Winter, if you draw an I, you get QI for 44. So this is not the play I would have made either. But you do want to turn over tiles. Again, you do want the blank. The blank is pretty important. The S is pretty important. You are going to have QI underneath. Yeah, I would have done that Elder Word, but there are some benefits to this play. It's not the play I would have made though, for sure. You still do need the S here, by the way. There aren't any good lanes that don't have an S in them. The Wise lane and the Ledger's lane are the two best lanes in the board, so. As opposed to last game where the S was not even really relevant, here the S is like almost as good as a blank. It's really, really good here. Just shows you how much the value of tiles can be. Last game the S was worth maybe about 5, and this turn it's about. Oh yeah, the centrist lane too, right? So last game the S was worth maybe 5, and this game it's worth like 20. Maybe even more than 20. S is a very, very good tile here. Jackson has the orgy hook set up. I might honestly exchange and keep the Y here. I would strongly consider that. Oh, he actually has OO lined up in place. Ooh, okay. That seems okay. I still think I might exchange and keep the Y. Keeping the U is okay, though, at least for the Q. Seems at least alright. So Sid does draw the blank, and he draws a U on top of it, but doesn't really have that great of options. I think I would burn the blank here. It's going to be so hard to cash for full value later. If you can just play quiet here for 51, I think that's perfectly fine. He has that lined up. If you're not going to burn the blank here, your options are QI underneath, which is at least okay. HELU is perfectly decent. You can bingo on future turns, etc. Or just fishing and hoping you draw something, which is all right. If you just drop the H, for example, with like haha or something like that, you bingo with a lot, actually. You bingo with all the A's, all the E's, all the I's. Some other tiles as well. I'm probably not even seeing all of the options, but you bingo with well over half of the bag, some of which score a lot. So I could be convinced of that. I might actually prefer that the more I look at this. You bingo so often, and even if you don't bingo, you can just fish on, fish next turn. It might actually be better just to drop the H here. There's stuff like, equalize, relique. It obviously can get better than that. You could just draw a play that fits up here. Parallel. He is going to burn the blank, though. It's obviously the lowest variance line. And he is ahead. Like, he's going to be up a tempo after this. But certainly is risky. What is Jackson's medium-term hope? A better play with Orgy, basically, is his medium-term hope with Fu. But probably wouldn't have been my decision. But it is reasonable. I mean, you are going to get a better play with Orgy most of the time. Jackson always, yes, Jackson is always looking for a better Orgy. It is true. Not a lot of options here for Jackson. He might be a little bit more worried, a little bit more willing to play OY now. No, we do not have Yui. My sister says Yui all the time. Like, literally all the time. It's kind of weird. But she calls all roundabouts Yuis. She lives in rural, rural West Coast, so I'm not really sure why she does that. It's not really that common out here, but Jackson has Yui lined up. Okay, yeah, he's gonna play Quay. It does bingo the most often, which is certainly a strength of it. It also keeps a much better lead than OY does. But it doesn't open the board as much, which may or may not be a good thing. Sid has pretty balanced rack, but nothing amazing. Plays Flea. Seems okay to me. Keeping the H for scoring. Doesn't have a lot of options. Trying to block the main threat in terms of scoring this board, which is that foo hook. So I'm okay with this. All right, Crafty, you can just wait. It doesn't really block. It makes it so that when you play, if you block ledgers next turn, that does really block. But you can always reopen by something like enemy. It's true. It also makes it less likely that foo hooks like bingo, which is important. Like fool and foot are no longer going to bingo nearly as often when you put the A there. Yeah, you can still make a play that often reaches a triple, but that's not really what Sid's concerned about. Sid's concerned about bingos that completely alter the game. Sid plays almost immediately. I don't even see what Sid's last tile is here. I actually don't know what Sid... Can someone tell me what Sid's last tile is besides DI? I think it's DIE, but I can't see that last tile at all. It's just at a weird angle. DIS, okay. Oh, he drew the last S. That's pretty devastating. Okay. I would have preferred bots there for what it's worth. I think the T hook and the E hook potentially on the bath is definitely worth avoiding, and I think you could have just switched the H and the T and scored a lot more, or scored the same amount and had a much better board for you, but it's not likely to matter. So in Jackson's position, you're looking for what can you hit. Why not just Ba? Because the T is less likely, like, stuff that starts with A is a lot less likely than starts with T. Although I guess it's probably equally likely here. Also, the A parallels with Ba. I don't know. There's things you can even make a case for making, like, playing baths there if you really want. I don't know. All right. Jackson's probably looking at what you can hit from the I and Gi because that's probably is most likely to win. Anything he opens is likely to just get blocked. So yeah, no, Ahi is not CSW. So like he's close to stuff like ideative, ideating. So if he's looking to fish the V, probably if he can fish the V and hit a G, he can play ideating, but not really a great way of fishing the V. In fact, I don't think there's any way of fishing the V. Good check. He could fish by playing Dev. That's actually not a bad option. Dev and then trying to draw a G and then hitting your out. Certainly at least okay. Jackson's not going to win by outscoring. That's just not going to happen. I think he knows that. He could still obviously draw ideating. If he draws a N, then he draws ideating. But so he's looking at playing AV off. I'm not sure where he's going to play AV off. Like, where's he looking at? Maybe Tav and playing TAV? I'm not sure. I think just going all in with ideating is probably the way to go here. There's only 2 ends, so it's 2 out of 11. You probably do win. There is redating if you miss, or as a second spot. It's possible Sid won't empty the bag, although he definitely should. But I think you have to just go for it here and play Dev and just hope the end's in the bag. Obviously, we can see it's not. Sid has both ends on his rack, but he plays Tav, which is interesting. Probably just trying to maximize his chances of bingoing by playing something like Tedding as an option. He can also still draw redating, he can still draw ideating, etc. And it makes it much harder for Sid to be fishing. Like Sid can only play 1 tile off and probably isn't going to want to do that. So he's making, if he plays off 2 tiles, then Sid can only play 1 tile. Whereas if Jackson plays 1 tile, Sid can then play 2 tiles and maybe outrun some of his options. Although ideating would just outrun everything. So, but it's hard to go all in on a tile that you don't even know if it's in the bag or not. Sid's gonna be looking now. Okay, what does Jackson have? And here's the pool from Sid's perspective. Elderword, I probably just liked dropping the V with Dev by itself. But I would probably, I guess, prefer Tav over that, maybe? I don't know, actually. I think Jackson's play is okay. But yeah. I don't know what Jackson can hit out of this pool from Sid's point of view. You can look really quickly. Nothing. So there are no bingos from Sid's perspective. The biggest thing to be concerned about is stuff like waltzed, and that's not going to win the game. Sid just drops the D. Maybe hoping that he can get something decent if Jackson does bingo, but from his perspective, there are no bingos. Jackson plays Ritz. I don't think there are any outs for Jackson's point of view. Maybe there are. I'm not seeing them. And Sid's gonna play inlands probably. Dials. Yeah. He plays inland. And Jackson's gonna go out, maybe. Can he go out? No, he can't actually go out. But yeah, so Sid's gonna Jackson challenges. Yeah, I mean I can't blame him, I guess. I mean I've made challenges like this before, for sure. It could in lands, if that was challenged, I would totally understand that, because that could be inland could be an adjective. It's not, but it could be. Inland is obviously a more common word.
Three, 9, 3, 3, 2, 4.
And
draw
Sid
after
just goes out.
Weird plays, but
So it is going to be 5-5. It is going to be all for the marbles for the last game. This is proof we do not speak English well at all. Yeah, I mean I've definitely made challenges like this before. I think we all have. I challenged modernly once. I challenged Tripoli once.
oh, 16.
Some of us speak English good. Some of you do. I do not.
Different.
Despite the fact that I only speak English, I don't speak any other languages. I am not proficient at always speaking English good.
Josh, I just want.
He asked me if he should cook, and I was like, yeah.
All right, I'm gonna take a quick break. I'm assuming that the players will be coming up for Game 7, but they'll be like 2 or 3 minutes to set up the board and stuff. So I will be back.
It's gonna go to game 11.
Oh, Kenzie's taking a break. Okay. Filler.
Can we take a break too?
Yeah, of course.
No.
Yeah.
What?
Dude, it's like, oh, it's 9.
Alright, so Sid, you had F4I.
What? F4I?
F4I. EPHORI.
Where?
Here.
Yeah, or I've not seen that.
Stuff.
What?
You were watching
I
stream?
don't know what's the hell.
Dude, I don't know what the. I mean, this is
What?
setting up the Y.
Which
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know what the
I,
fuck
it
it
must
is.
have felt
Which
really shit to not like be able to use it ever.
Yeah, I know
What?
that. I didn't want to play Quake on it.
Did play GI setting up the
I was setting my Y.
Were you like watching the
Yeah,
game
yeah,
on stream?
watching.
Yeah.
Fuck, that was so hard. I have no
Yeah,
idea.
it
I know I
sucks.
did things wrong. I just have no idea.
No, you made some interesting fancy plays.
I made some interesting bad plays.
No, you played You both play well.
Like Twiner for 16 keeping Q.
Yeah,
like,
Twiner was.
Oh, we have to resolve the prediction.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Twiner
you
was
let
you
me
can
do that.
infer that maybe.
Oh, thank
Like,
you, Kenji.
even though it's not a great
Oh, he can't
play,
hear
maybe
us.
you can still infer like a Q. Would you infer like E?
Thank
That
you,
doesn't make
Kenji,
any
for
sense.
resolving the prediction.
Did you know that the flank's important? Honestly, I didn't infer Q.
Yeah. Then you blank on the next round. So.
Oh, it's nice.
Nice pickings.
Yeah, who were you just trying to get a play with Orgy and then think about it later?
Who? Yeah, I'm basically just trying to like obviously there is eventually a problem with someone trying to bingo, and I'm so much farther than he is, but I just don't want to get lost in the woodwork and just get fucked during. But like, I mean, I'm just literally just trying to score and bounce my act through.
Should
Maybe
we take like a
correct
10-minute break? Or
Yeah.
five,
Ooh.
4.
Who's commentating?
That's Kenji.
Yeah, I'm just gonna like.
So he only has kind words for you, but obviously.
Wait, was it already
What
resolved?
do you mean? Oh yeah, can't see. Yeah.
Okay. I need to let them know if I'm on break.
Yeah, okay, it was resolved.
Well, we both.
61% of people, or 61% of channel points voted for you to win this game.
Not really.
Yeah, 61%. I guess it's not technically 61% of people, but people bet like points that they accumulate by watching it, and they bet mostly in favor of you winning. So, yeah. Also, they wanted to know if you're okay with Graves getting posted on the cross.
Yeah, sure. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah. I don't know about the Porto one. I'm just kidding. That game was such a shit show. It was like, like I think all of us have like one of those games where we just play like absolute fucking garbage. Like.
It's worth noting for the sake of tiebreakers that this game actually means more to Jackson than Sid because of tiebreakers. Jackson's basically guaranteed to make finals if he wins this game, and Sid is not.
Does it like make a 7 of any kind with like?
Sid probably is gonna have to win the last set, or he's either gonna have to win the last set, or he's gonna have to hope Jackson loses to Josh. Because Jackson is gonna, if they're all 2-1, then Sid won 6-5 and 6. Will have won 6-5 and 6-4. Whereas both Noah and Jackson have won by much smaller margins. So Jackson wins, he's basically in because he's playing Josh, and only one of the other two players can can actually be 2-1. So he's not basically in, he's in. If Sid wins, then he's either gonna need to win or hope that Josh beats Jackson.
It's not gonna get old for a little while.
What are the standings? Noah is 1-1. Josh is 0-2, and both Sid and Jackson are 1-0. Sid, Noah is overall lost 6-2 and won 6-3. So he is whatever that is. 8-9 or whatever. But yeah, I guess Noah can't lose 6-5. Noah has to win at least 6-4, right? So let's see. Noah's 8-9. Sid is 12-9.
I think if I win, I'm guaranteed.
Yeah, so Noah has to win at least.
I need you to win, and I need you to beat Noah.
Yeah, Noah has to win 6-4 or more. Noah has to win by at least 6-4 or better if Sid wins this round.
You're like, no.
If
And Jackson just has to win, period.
Also beats Noah, I could get it.
Yeah, yeah. If I win,
So that's kind of how the
But if you
tiebreakers
win,
work.
Like, I could just chill.
Whereas if Sid wins this,
I think that
so Noah's rooting for Jackson to win, because if Jackson wins, then Noah just has to win. Whereas
did he not
if
see
Sid
an
wins,
error before?
then
Maybe he didn't fix
Noah
it.
has to beat Sid 6-4, or hope that Jackson loses
5 and 5 is 11 and 9, so like
Yeah.
10 and 9.
No, I missent him
by a
one of the
lot.
scores and he never fixed it.
So it's 10 and you're 10 and 9 right
I'm
now.
10 and 9. No, I'm 11 and 9 right now.
And Jackson is 11 and.
Can we just get it fixed though? Like,
What's the?
I
What's
literally
11 and 7 or something.
Oh yeah, 11 and 7.
Yeah, 11 and 7. I
can we
asked him.
fix it.
I asked him.
That's stupid. Come on, not you. We should get that game fixed. Josh, can we get the game fixed? Like, I've been docked a lot for like.
I think that's right, though, Josh. I mean, Josh is busy doing other things, obviously, but I think it's the case that
But I was 10 and 9
uh,
for 19 games.
it's simple. If Jackson wins, it's simple.
How am I
Yeah.
supposed to do that? He's the one that's in contact with Ryan.
I mean, the standings itself are not relevant, I don't think. Maybe they are.
Him and Joey decided.
Oh, it goes by
to let
number of
Ryan do this.
total wins. Okay, then that's different. So 8. So Noah would have to win 6-3 then. Okay.
Yeah, I mean.
Unconceivable. Yeah, that's a bit weird.
We'll get fixed.
I've never heard unconceivable in my life. Okay, so Noah would have to win 6-3. I got it.
Alright, I'm about good to start, but
Cool.
I don't know.
Any day?
Stream is good.
Yeah.
They're good.
So Sid's in pretty good shape, actually, if he wins. He just has to win 4 games against Noah
3 more.
out of 10.
Oh, we can choose.
Good job.
Okay, you ready?
Almost.
Jackson is overwhelming. Sid is going first, for what it's worth.
It's a pretty big game.
But Jackson's overwhelmingly favored. Interesting.
Technically, they think you want to see it.
I mean, I would
The
hopefully
standings
my
think you-
commentary isn't skewing this too much. I obviously probably think that Jackson is favored in this game, but I would have to take the money at this point. Like, if you're gonna lay me 3-1, I'm gonna take Sid for sure. 3-1's a lot. Yeah, yeah. At 3-1, I'm taking Sid all day. It's not 3-1.
Alright, I'm ready if you are.
Yeah, go ahead.
Alright.
Alright, guys.
All right, looks like they're getting started. Yeah, I'm guessing one person bet like 10K on Jackson. That's probably what's going on. I didn't watch all of the games beforehand. I'm gonna guess that Sid has drawn the majority of blanks in this set. I'm pretty sure, honestly. Let's see if Tentacle is right. Not looking right so far. So neither player with the bingo. I do assume Burler will come down. Maybe just Burl, actually. Burl would make some sense. Just keep the hooks for yourself. No chance he knows Burl, or he might. I mean, Burl is just as good. I probably would actually end up playing Burl. It doesn't really matter, obviously, but Jackson does have gyrostat lined up, so he does line up sometimes. Sid has BRR lined up. You could make a case for that, I guess, if you really want to close board. But PILE is not exactly a good leave, and BRR is not really that defensive, so probably wouldn't be my pick. But if you're really devoted on playing defense, maybe. If I were devoted on playing defense, I would actually pick Blip. Putting the eye on the star. That is actually probably the best defensive play, at least from my perspective. Sid does have Burl lined up, but he has Burl without the E lined up. And something has gone weird with the stream where his name is now in the middle of the screen. Sid plays Burl and puts the L in the star. That's interesting. Probably trying to block the top left again. That is a way that you block the top left, is by trying to put stuff. By putting a letter that mostly starts words, you can block the top left in that way if you really want to. So I guess I'm not that surprised. It does make sense from that sort of closed board theory, if that's what you're really looking for. Again, Gibson would do this a lot. I don't necessarily think it's the best way of closing a board, but there are many ways to close a board, and this is one of them. Jackson with a few different options here. Bogey is probably the most conventional option. He has Gritty. He has, let's see. I guess Bordy if he really wants it. Orgy again. Orgy is always an option. I suppose with Jackson, Orgy is always an option. No, I assume I think he's gonna play Bogey most of the time. He might play Gritty. It's possible. Playing Bogey isn't super inviting when there's a bunch of floaters and all of them are consonants and you have 4 consonants. So he does play Gritty. One of the 2 reasonable plays. I would imagine there is an element from Jackson's perspective, I imagine, if he hasn't been drawing the blanks, which I'm going to assume he hasn't, that you might make plays like Gritty just to make it more likely you draw blanks, just because you're so tired of not drawing them, that anytime there's a marginal decision between, let's say, Bogey and Gritty, you start playing Gritty just because you're frustrated. That is something that definitely happens. And something that I've definitely done as well. It's just like, okay, I'm not going to lose the game this way, and then you just start playing more tiles. Um, especially since Sid doesn't play a lot of tiles in general. If you're not drawing blanks, you feel like you need to draw more tiles. Blanks don't matter. Blanks matter a lot. a lot, a lot, a lot. What did you mess up? The stream looks fine, Josh. I guess the board is upside down, so maybe not, but yeah. Not a lot of great plays. The stuff like just hooking Burl, but I don't know if he even knows Burl. I could see him just dropping like EU with like Ute, Liu, something like that. There's Eperite, but I just don't see Sid ever playing Eperite. Just doesn't fit with his style. Could just exchange even. It's a possibility. Or Pule. I could see that as well. But I think he's going to fish. I think maybe fish and kind of close the board down some. Yeah, Daj, the O is not a particularly good tile. It's not that bad, but it's not good. I would say that, we in Scrabble we usually form equity charts and equity values, and the O is roughly, I would guess, I don't know, there's 27 tiles, and the O is, I think, 16th or so. So it's not bad. 16th out of whatever isn't terrible. It's just not good. Uh, Jackson's going to very much interpret this as a fishing play, and Sid drew amazingly. He drew um, AN to EIPRT, so he has Painter, stuff like that with Burl. He may not know Burl, to be honest. I'm starting to get really concerned about the fact that he may not know Burl, in which case his bingo doesn't play. He has to find Burl. I don't think that there's any possibility that Jackson creates another lane either. Maybe he does. Jackson's looking at Gov as well. So it may be the case that Sid draws a bingo and with Retina P and it doesn't play. After Gov, nothing will play. Oh no, Pertain will still fit. I lied. Pertain will still fit if Gov is played. Gov is played. Oh, I have to update this board a little bit. So now we're going to see. Okay, he does have it lined up, so I guess he does know Burl does take an E. Interesting that he made this decision beforehand to play Burl and not play the E, knowing that it took an E the entire time just to try to close the top left. I mean, he's achieved closing the top left, so at the very least it worked. And yeah, it does come down. Sorry about the lag, guys. Poon is going to come down in response. Note though, the top left is completely screwed. Like, there's no realistic way that's opening anytime soon. Yeah, not a lot of bingos did fit after Gov. Most of them were things like starting with D, forming LEUD or something like that. But Sid did manage to draw one. Not with a particularly strong leave either. Jackson is drawing well, however. That looks like a pretty good draw. Oh, Sid is also drawing well. There is another blank. Not much to go with it, though. This is not a good board for tiles like the K, H, or X. I guess he has 6 and Uts. That's at least reasonable. Also, just like XI, stuff like that. There are options. XI, I don't expect to come down, even though it's the play most people would make. It's very, very open and defensive. I think even I would not play XI here. I would probably be playing 6. Maybe I would be playing KHI here. KHI is also reasonable, or KHIS even. In this position, I think you should be defensive. Unlike where I've said in the past that I think that Sid is maybe too defensive, in this situation, it's definitely called for. Board is very, very dead. Still lots of game to be played. You need to kill the quadrant as best as you can. Jackson's range is actually going to be pretty strong, probably. So you really want to kill the board. You do not want to play XI very often. And Sid does play KHIS, which I think is a good play here. So Jackson has Osmos lined up. That's a reasonable option for sure. Gets him back within scoring range. Scores more than any other play. Does go trying to hit the blank a little bit, which he is probably going to need. You know, you see that Sid has one. He's going to need the other one almost for certain. Could just hook the M onto MY and then try to bingo that way. But the S's again don't really have a lot of value. The S just has a value of being a word that's in lots of words, but there's no S hooks, and there's not likely going to be one created anytime soon. It's not going to get blocked. So because of that, stuff like MOD, hooking my are just a lot worse than usual. And as such, probably not worth it. And so he has mod lined up, but I actually do think I prefer Osmos here. Yeah, it's going to probably get underlapped, and so it's not going to really open the board that well, but it's not going to be too easy to underlap because that S in Osmos, the second S, blocking that is going to be kind of difficult. You're going to probably be able to create some sort of line outside of that if it is blocked, and it's going to be very difficult for Sid to keep blocking. Meanwhile, you're still blank hunting. You could still open other stuff. That N in Poon is going to still be there for quite a while. That K and Kai's is going to be able to open the board some. There are other ways to create S hooks if need be once the game is a little bit more, once the game is a little bit more open. It's going to be just really hard to stop all bingos from ever happening. Even stuff that end in ON, there's lots of TION and SION words. So I don't think it's going to be that easy to try to shut down the entire board, despite the fact that the entire top left is basically completely dead. There's also lots of ways to use that K to try to open that quadrant up that are going to open up a secondary line where Sid's going to have to make a choice. Do I stop bingos immediately or do I stop bingos in the long run? Dyson does elect to go with mods, getting rid of one of his S's, which makes sense. Again, the S doesn't have a lot of value here. And letting Sid know that you have an S isn't really that big of a deal. Still might have preferred Osmos, but I think this is at least a reasonable line as well. Again, just maximizing your bingo percentage in the short term. You can also create S's in the medium term as well. Sid has the Z and the X and the blank, all good tiles, but not really that great of option. There's XU, which is going to create a pretty good E spot. He's not going to really want to be doing that. But none of the options are really all that appealing. Almost everything that scores well opens something. This opens something, this opens something, that opens something. AX, I guess, but that still opens an E. Not great. Yeah, not a lot of spectacular plays here. Trying to think of what I would do. His range is pretty bad, so something like Zona, even though it's usually really bad because you're opening a huge spot, isn't so bad here because you know that Jackson doesn't have much that go there. You have the X for XU and maybe something like Xeric or something like that. He is going to probably block it with the E, which is kind of a problem. Yeah, he just Fender. He's like, I mean, in this case, he'd get hit by Fenders, which is really hard. But that E hook is probably the reason why you don't want to do Zona. Not because of the underlap, but because of Zone A. So yeah, maybe it is just XU. Not because I love the play, but it's gonna, it looks like you're losing the exchange because he hits XU. Jackson almost certainly plays something like FE, and that's not good for you either. And you don't have any of the rehooks to axe, so this doesn't feel very good. He's gonna play AX. That might be better. The leave is just so bad. But I understand why he's making that play. Other options, maybe Zinko. Um, yeah, you're just not really happy with anything there. Uh, yeah. Maybe AX here, actually. Very unlikely he has a Y, so that looks pretty safe. But he does go with AX there. Interesting rack with lots of different situations. I was thinking XU in that spot, yeah. I think I prefer AX, but I think I prefer AX North. I don't know. I don't see very much potential for the Z to get better on this board. I mean, you can see that Sid drew Kazik, but it's not going to likely play, and he drew very well and still doesn't really have a good Z spot. You think he has to play Kef? I think he's just going to play, yeah, maybe. Fenders. I think he honestly might just drop. Oh, AX is south, sorry. It's the wrong spot. He's going to play Kerf. Interesting. He does have Curize, yeah. Kef just gets overlapped so easy. I think Kerf is fine. He's doing that because he doesn't want overlaps to happen. Sid's rack is pretty much random from his point. Interesting. Sid plays Craze, which is obviously not the correct play. Even if you don't see Curize or no Curize, it probably wouldn't be playing that. But yeah, Craze just is a mistake. IU is blank is just not a good leave. But yeah, still looking good. Yeah, no, it's still looking good for you, Josh. It is still looking good for you for sure. It is kind of one of those situations where Josh needs one person to win and Noah really wants the other person to win. Noah really wants Jackson to win. Jackson's just going to drop the Q. Plays Kadi. No reason to really leave the Q8. No reason to play Kaid and leave the underlaps. He's not going to be wanting to hit that spot. Noah's making a curry. That's cool. Jackson draws a bingo that's going to play almost no matter what. AW. Sid plays very quickly on a rack that I would not be playing very quickly on. AW. I may be playing Wits. There's also Wah in that spot. Wits over here. I would probably be playing one of those. Not sure which one yet. Probably Wah, but definitely be thinking about Wits. Probably not playing AW. But it might work out. AW does block. I expect Spender to come down probably. Maybe Senders. Something like this. You don't want to play Endears. You don't want to do this. There's no reason to leave that hook, especially when you know that he's likely to do. He's likely to respond to that. Yeah, here comes Spender. Makes some sense. There is something to be said, for those of you seeing like Crafty's comments on that. There's also something to be said that Sid likes playing this way, and like Sid might even acknowledge in some cases that what he's doing isn't necessarily so-called optimal. But if you're having a lot more fun playing away, you're gonna play better. So there is something to be said for that. Like, it's not that his you can make this style work, and if you're having more fun doing it and you're making it work, why not do it? Axcertypo does point out that he has unweight here. He could play that if he wants, but I think he's just going to play 2. 2 is just a lot safer and honestly better. If you notice too, this board is now completely dire. Like 2 is safe enough. I don't know. You can make a case for playing unweight actually. I'm assuming unweight takes an S. I actually don't know for sure. Plays high. I don't think I agree with that either. It keeps Josh's favorite later the G, which is obviously not ideal. You could have played UG even and just had a pretty similar theme, and gotten rid of the G, and kept the T instead, and kept the underlap for QI instead. So I don't think I like that. I think I prefer either bingoing or taking 2. Probably playing 2. Jackson has Obit lined up, but maybe not so great. Yeah. Sid draws the other blank. Or not the other blank. He draws Enigma blank. There's not really a spot for that, though. And Itsui, well, if Itsui comes down, then renaming is coming down. That's not great. And Pixie might come down as well. Pixie does come down. So Sid now is going to probably bingo. I don't see anything to the end yet. Oh, he has non-image. You could see a non-image. Let's see. What else does he have? Just non-image. So if he wants to do something that's going to really change the game, he has to find non-image. I do think he's going to find it. Renaming certainly, but renaming doesn't really end the game. Like non-image is pretty much game over. I think Jackson has a lot of life left if he plays renaming. And that's what he plays, unfortunately. I think Sid needed to find non-image here. He can just draw the second blank, obviously, and win. But if Jackson draws the second blank, this is a game for sure. There's a lot of things Jackson can still do after this play. Whereas after non-image, I think the game is just over. But Jackson's not even behind an entire bingo now. Jackson's behind by 46. Doesn't even necessarily need to bingo if he draws the third. There is no third blank. Yeah, okay. Even still though, like there's things that Jackson can draw. Get him in positions that are okay. There's a case S that he does need to draw the case S probably as well. Probably make some sort of S setup that's difficult to block and then hit that. Something like that. Yeah, probably looking at something along the burls, the GRITTY stuff. You have some S subs you can make over there for sure. Subs you can make with T and hot, although that's gonna be much harder to do. Jackson plays Jug, makes sense. Needs to get rid of the J and the U. They're both huge liabilities. Was Object reasonable? Not really. Why would you do Object, Josh? Just gets underlapped every time, and then what? You need that spot to. You need to create a spot that does something. Okay, Sid plays Furley fairly quickly. Keeps the C. C is not a particularly good tile. If you're Sid, you need to be looking now at killing all the setups that. Like, you need to be predicting setups and blocking them. And that mostly is the R and the T and gritty. I know that's not exactly intuitive. Oh, he draws the S. Okay. Well, that's pretty much game over. Like, even though that's not a good rack, like that S is pretty much Jackson's only way back into this game. Yeah, it's gonna be pretty rough. Wants to get rid of this O. Probably gonna play boat or something. Maybe obit. Let's see. Anything good? Obviously, in Jackson's shoes, you're looking for setups to try to get back in the game. So, or spots that are hard to block. So something like Ace, for example. This AE hook is hard to block. So bit or well, not out of those two, it's definitely bet, Josh. You a lot more stuff ends in A. A Kai. Well, a Kai doesn't fit here. There's no AF, right? But that's the right idea. Yeah, ace here or bet here. I think those are both okay. Even a bet here is kind of okay, actually. Just play the A yourself. Yeah, that's what he's electing to do. Just because it's not easy to block that and score decently. Although Sid's going to block it almost for sure. I mean, obviously Jackson doesn't know he has the S, so he's still going to hunt for the S. He's going to be bitterly disappointed, but that is probably still what you should be doing, is trying to hit S's here. And trying to fork the board. You're basically just trying to fork the board and hope you hit stuff. Cis GLL. Sid plays Cis, which blocks its scoring option, but I actually don't like this very much. If for no other reason, then you're not giving Jackson. You're telling Jackson, okay, your ass is not an out now, and now you need to find something else. And because of that, that might actually prove to be a bit problematic. It's probably going to be okay here, but you also don't leave yourself a vowel, so in case something weird does happen and you need a vowel to block, you can't. So I wouldn't do this. I think this is a little bit risky in terms of where your outs are and what you can do about them, but it's gonna be hard to see how Jackson punishes. Obviously, you're more concerned now about what you're creating, not necessarily what you have, because you're always going to need a perfect draw to have any shot at this, but then there's not a lot of perfect draws you can really see here. Again, you're looking for what you could be facing and what you think your opponent's going to do. What are you looking for here? You're basically just going to try to hit the A. And you're going to create spots that are going to try to hit the A. I think that's your best hope. And there isn't a lot. But there are a fair number of 8s actually that do end in A. So I think that's kind of where you're going. Play oot under the B. Maybe. What do you... Maybe. You might just play... The problem with oot is that you're going to let him block the A and block the setup that you're creating. You really, really don't want to do that. You really need to try to open a spot that does not block that A. So I prefer something like OR, O-A-R, on top of pearls. What you really don't want to happen is something like oot, and then row 10 gets blocked, and this A is now gone. You need to protect this A at all costs. This A is like your only meal ticket to getting back in this game if you're Jackson. So any plays that you make that let Sid block both whatever you're creating and block the A are non-starters. So anything that's in that spot where you're suggesting oot, he can't play there. He just can't. There's just too many 3s that start 10B that block, that do everything. I'm not a big fan of this just because now something like Jen is going to happen. Yeah, he does it anyway. This is harder to block, to be fair. Yeah, I'm not a fan of this. I think he needs to play on top. I think he needs to play like OAR or TAR or something. It doesn't matter because he draws complete garbage, which again is probably what you're going to draw the vast majority of the time. But Sid's going to be able to play something like GEN now and block everything, and then there are no outs whatsoever. Like what you want Sid to do is do something like Vogue, and then you have hope. Like maybe you can get something, but probably what's going to happen instead is something like Vogue, and Vogue is just a game ender. Like there's nothing. I think that's a. Oh, it might be a D. If it's a D, then he's probably going to play something like, I don't know. What plays was there? Probably something. GEN even is fine. Oh, he's gonna leave the A. Not recommended, but okay. The other thing we're thinking about, by the way, as a potential setup was NU over Gov.
Yeah.
And then hooking GNU. Obviously, Sid doesn't have to worry about it because he has the G, but that is another way to try to open the board. That would be very difficult to close. Jackson just plays TITI. He's kind of just resigned himself to the game here. He can't win, and he probably knows that. And Sid just bingos out with Cold Zone.
Good again.
Which, kind of, yeah.
471.
Is how this game goes sometimes. So yeah, Josh, you do have a shot now. You need Sid to beat Noah, and you need to beat Jackson. That is your shot, and you need to win by a decent margin as well. You probably need to beat Jackson like 6-2, I think. All right, thanks for hanging out, Elderword. Catch you later.
Yeah.
Oh, created UI blade. Terrorize.
All right, so standings now. Sid is up 2 sets. Jackson and Noah have won 1 set. Josh has won 0 sets. Our hero has only won one. Still has life. He needs to win his set, and then he needs Sid to win his set against Noah. Not gonna be easy, but it is possible for sure.
He hasn't fixed them yet.
So everybody is still alive.